Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 5 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you are able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish?
Here.
Councilmember Harrison?
Here.
Councilmember Song?
Here.
Councilmember Watson? Absent. Councilmember Radina?
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer? Here. Councilmember Ackman?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here.
Councilmember Cornell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Song, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor.
We do have two introductions today. First, from our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, Chair Carter. Chair Carter, you have the comment.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Madam Clerk. First of all, I hope everybody had a good Labor Day. You probably know ICPOC did not meet in August, so I have nothing to report on that. I do note that on your agenda today, you have approval, second reading for 3 new commissioners for ICPOC. And we believe they will make excellent commissioners. We've gone out and grabbed people and said the people that we thought would be helpful. And we have another one coming probably at your next meeting. So hopefully we will be at a full complement very soon. We are still looking for a youth member. So if there's anyone, student, we're looking for a student, U of M, EMU, Washington Community College, to fill that spot. We have a lot of work to begin doing this fall. I have spoken before, and I'm going to speak again about our public forum that is coming up. It's going to be Wednesday, September 27th. I've heard from a couple of you, and I hope that you will accept our invitation to attend. You know, our ordinance charges that we are to create an environment which allows for better communication, understanding, and relations between the department and the community. So we're hoping that we have police officers come out. We have asked Dr. Karpiak to come and give a more extended presentation than he did here. And there will be a time for questions if anyone does have questions about that traffic study. We've asked Councilwoman Harrison to come and give a few words about the driving ordinance, driving disparity ordinance, equality ordinance. And again, there will be time for questions and answers and discussion. And we're going to ask the community, we may get 5 community members, we may get 55. We don't know, we haven't tried this before. But it is an opportunity for folks to come out, talk with us, not just ask questions, but tell us what they want. As I've said before, we are your only commission with the word community in our title. And so we do intend to try and involve the community. That is basically all that I have. I hope to see some of you on the 27th. We're going to be at the Peace Neighborhood Center. And we are grateful to Commissioner Billups for allowing us to meet at that venue. We think it's going to be a good program. So thank you very much, unless there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do now have the pleasure of engaging a proclamation of Disability Voting Rights Week in Ann Arbor. Chair Damian, you want to join me up front?
Thank you, Mr.
Good to see you as always.
Yeah, good to be seen. Thank you.
You bet.
All right.
So we, of course, in the city of Ann Arbor, we focus on a wide variety of things. We naturally provide basic services constantly and consistently and look forward to improving them always. And nothing is as more fundamental to the provision of basic services in our context than voting rights. And further, we are a welcoming community seeking to include all members of our community in all aspects of civic life. Therefore, it is my great pleasure with the initiative of Councilmember Ghazi Edwin and the chair of CODI, the Commission on Disability Issues, to effect this proclamation, that is to say, Disability Voting Rights Week. So I'll give it a brief reading, then turn the mic over to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, whereas the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the American Disabilities Act of 1990, and the Help America Vote Act of 2002 set accessibility requirements for federal polling locations, and whereas widely recognized standards and good practices maintain that the election cycle should remove barriers and promote broad participation of eligible voters, and whereas as many of 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability, with over 2.3 million disabled persons living in the state of Michigan. And whereas Ann Arbor has worked to improve access to voting, and it is widely recognized that accessibilities, despite those efforts, still do exist. Whereas Ann Arbor has committed resources to improve physical access to public and private polling places, including parking lot striping, electric door openers, and new ramps. Whereas the City of Ann Arbor recognizes that people with disabilities are an important and crucial part of our community, who provide unique perspectives, lived experiences, and knowledge through their varied intersectional identities, and that their voices make our community stronger. And whereas the City of Ann Arbor calls attention that the barriers people with disabilities face when casting their vote, and further encourages election administration to ensure that all disabled voters have full and equitable access to the polls within their jurisdiction. Now, therefore, I, Christopher Taylor, Mayor of Ann Arbor, do hereby proclaim the week of September 11 through September 15 as Disability Voting Rights Week in the City of Ann Arbor. There you go.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much to the mayor and to the city for this gracious audience. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you this evening. And, as chair of the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues, I want to thank all of my fellow commissioners for their support, for their dedication to making this city inclusive and equitable for all. Briefly, as chairman of the Commission on Disability Issues, I stand before you today to also express my unwavering support of the resolution to eliminate subminimum wage here in the city of Ann Arbor. And it is time for us to take a stand for fairness and equality and the rights of all individuals, including those with disabilities. You see, subminimum wage is often referred to as the practice of paying individuals with disabilities less than the federal minimum wage. And it is not discriminatory, but perpetuates a system of inequality. And it undermines the dignity and worth of those individuals working hard with a disability and denying them the opportunity to fully participate in the workforce and contribute to their communities. So I encourage you this evening, by abolishing the subminimum wage, you stand as a powerful message to all individuals, regardless of their abilities and their equal treatment and respect, to have a fair and equitable wage here in the city. So as you look at this today, I encourage you, as a business owner, as someone in this community who has grown up here, please consider to abolish subminimum wage here in the city. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you as always. We now come to public comment reserved time. Public comment reserved time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserved time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all instances, whether here or online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. My earnest apologies. I didn't realize that I didn't recollect, pardon me, that we had additional members in connection with the Disability Voting Rights Week proclamation online. And so now we have Dessa.
Hello, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Dessa Cosmo. I am both a wheelchair user and the founding director of an organization called Detroit Disability Power. And I want to thank the clerk and the city council for inviting me today. It is a great honor to be in the company of folks like Zach Damon and Councilwoman Aisha Ghazi Edwin to support the Disability Voting Rights Week proclamation. This is something that is important for raising awareness, and I want to give you a real brief story about why that is. I mentioned I'm a wheelchair user and that I started the Disability Justice Organization. And a lot of that has to do with my experience as a regular, excited, enthusiastic voter. Many times when I have gone to vote in my wheelchair, I have struggled to do so. I actually live in Detroit, not in Ann Arbor, but what I have learned over the years is that the challenges around accessible voting are not in a singular place, but very common throughout the country. So back in 2018, I went to vote in my wheelchair. I was very pleased to get into the building, to get my ballot, and then I turned around to figure out where I would go fill it out, and there was absolutely nowhere that I could reach from my wheelchair. All of the booths were standing height, and there was nowhere for me to vote. And when I turned around to ask the woman who had signed me in where I should go, she didn't have an answer. And while she was very kind, she clearly, no one there, had clearly thought about, oh, what do we do if a wheelchair using voter comes in today? How do we accommodate someone who moves through this world differently? And so after a few minutes of consulting each other, they cleared off a table in the back. I was able to vote privately and independently. That night, I happened to have an advisory meeting of my organization, all of whom were other people with various disabilities. And as I shared the story of what happened, each of them shared similar stories. These are blind people, people with cognitive disabilities, other people with mobility disabilities, but every single one of us had a story of a challenge voting. Fast forward, very important election of 2020, I showed up to vote. I wanted to use the accessible voting machine. I apparently was the first person that day to ask to do it. No one there at the precinct knew how to turn it on or what the code was. I waited about 45 minutes while they played phone tag with the others in the headquarters of the clerk's office. And at the end of the day, I was able to vote on the voting machine, but they couldn't tabulate my vote because the paper was a different size than what normally goes in the tabulator from a paper ballot. So I actually left that election not knowing if my vote counted. And again, it just reinforced that there are lots of different ways that problems can come up on election day, but none of them are unpreventable. Both stories I just told you could easily be solved with a little more training and preparation. And so in 2022, my organization, Detroit Disability Power, worked with the Carter Center down in Atlanta to do a massive audit of Metro Detroit polling sites to determine where the accessibility problems were. And while we didn't come to Ann Arbor, we focused on 15 jurisdictions in Southeast Michigan, and the results that came back were very troubling, although not surprising. Of those 261 polling sites that we audited on Election Day in November of 2022, only 16% were fully accessible. And so when we look at this data, we know that that means that voter turnout of disabled residents is lower than it should be. We know that people aren't able to vote like they should and are entitled to, and that we have some work to do. And so we are working with very cooperative clerks like yours to ensure that we're fixing the problems, especially the low-hanging fruit problems. There's many of these problems that don't cost money to fix, but also tackling the harder problems like the infrastructure that needs to be altered to make sure that people can get in the building and vote. So this report is available. It's also, we have lots of briefings and workshops to learn how to make these polling places accessible. There's a lot more I could say about that, but what I'm really here to say today is that I'm very excited for this proclamation. Disability Voting Rights Week is a great way to raise awareness about these things, and I appreciate the time and attention that you're putting towards it.
Thank you, Ms. Cosmo. Our first public speaker is Michelle Hughes.
Michelle Hughes is on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm here to talk about the the resolution DC2 for, the safety in traffic calming on neighborhood streets. And I'm here to say that I'm super excited about it. It sets safety as the default, and I think that is what we should come to expect as a community. When I think we should know by now. We have the information available to us that our roads are not safe, that they're designed for cars and not humans. I believe that neighborhood streets should be a place that's safe for kids to play and for people to be people, for people to gather and congregate. And I think that the more we can do to calm traffic, the more we can make those things a reality. And I think that we have other opportunities as well. So pass this tonight for sure. But I'd like to see something coming forward in the future that calms traffic by default on major roads by doing road diets, where anytime we repave a road, anytime we repave a major road, that we know for sure that there's going to be a road diet unless there's a very good reason not to do a road diet, and staff better explain to us why they didn't do a road diet on a particular street. But I'm real excited to see the traffic calming resolution, because traffic safety should be something that we can count on, not something that we have to beg for. So please pass DC2 tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elliot Carter.
Elliot Carter, phone number ending in 429. Go ahead and unmute your phone. Press *6. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Elliot Carter. I am a limited licensed social worker who graduated with my MSW from University of Michigan in 2020. I work for Disability Network Washington Monroe Livingston, and I and my organization support the passing of Resolution 23-1469, directing the city administrator to advocate the Michigan legislature to end the use of 14C certificate in the state of Michigan. Disability Network originally formed as the Ann Arbor Center for Independent Living almost 50 years ago, making us the fourth oldest center for independent living in the country. And so much has changed for people with disabilities since 1976. For starters, lifelong institutionalization is no longer the ever-present threat to people with disabilities that it was, and Americans are much more accustomed to the idea of people with disabilities leading full, independent, fulfilling lives, including working the same jobs that non-disabled folks do. Employment opportunities for people with disabilities have increased exponentially with the help of technology and state, federal, and workplace policy. But an 85-year-old policy is still holding people with disabilities back from full inclusion in the workplace. And this is Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act, of 1938. I'm sure it's becoming increasingly clear to the honorable members of this council that the state minimum wage of $10.10 an hour is not enough to get by in the city of Ann Arbor anymore, that it is still legal for some people to be paid less than $1 an hour in Michigan thanks to this policy. A business, community vocational organization, or educational institution can apply for a federal waiver which allows them to use a convoluted formula with virtually no oversight to pay people with disabilities based on their observed productivity on the job. People without disabilities do not need to have their productivity measured to determine their wages, so why is this still the case for people with disabilities? The arguments for keeping sub-minimum wage are often acquiescent of the shortcomings of other government policies designed to keep people with disabilities out of poverty. And it is true that these policies often require people with disabilities to monitor and report their earnings and assets in order to keep receiving assistance. But organizations like ours, Disability Network, exist to provide benefits such as services such as benefits counseling, which allows a person with a disability to see how much they can work at a competitively compensated job.
30 seconds.
Supplemental assistance. All right. By several advocates with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Michigan are currently pushing for a state law that would include a phase-out plan that involves connecting former sub-minimum wage earners to local resources that already exist. I hope that Michigan joins the 13 states that have currently banned the use of 14C sub-minimum wage certificates and support the passing of this resolution. Thank you, Councilmember Aisha Jaldi Edwin, for inviting me to speak today, and thank you, Honorable Council members, for hearing my remarks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kirk Westfall.
Kirk Westfall, phone number 955. Go ahead.
Greetings, Council. I'm calling in support of DC 3, Resolution to Improve Data Transparency and Performance Management. I want to thank the authors and sponsors and make honorable mention to John Mursky, who would never want credit for it, but has been years championing city goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, otherwise known as SMART goals. I appreciate that this resolution highlights the importance of transparency and performance management and directs that an implementation process begin. And for people following along at home, performance management, according to the Society for Human Resource Management, is defined as the process of maintaining or improving employee job performance through the use of performance assessment tools, coaching, and counseling, as well as providing continuous feedback. The last time I addressed council in person was exactly a year and a half ago on the night that the city administrator was hired. At that time, I encouraged you to start working on your most important job, evaluating the city administrator. I recommended doing so informally on a quarterly basis with perhaps a more formal evaluation on an annual basis. To my knowledge, in the intervening time, not one administrator or city attorney evaluation has been done. I hope that adopting this resolution sets council and staff on a path toward accountability and achievement. In order to be effective, though, I believe this resolution must be expanded. I have 3 suggestions. One is to agree on goals. The resolution makes reference to key performance indicators, but lacks a suggestion of what the key ones are or how to determine them. This should not be left up to staff. Only council can answer this question, and you should begin a process to determine which ones you really care about, what success looks like, and a time frame that's achievable. For example, are there any outcomes that you care about so much that you would give the city administrator a poor performance review if you didn't achieve it? I hope each of you can think of at least some, and then you can come to consensus on many of them. I want to know what those are, and I'm sure many people in the community do too. I hope that in the next budget cycle it will be clear where money and staffing should be allocated. Number 2, start basic evaluations now. Performance management is critical and it's something that shouldn't wait until this process is complete. Please begin evaluating the administrator on at least the general criteria that have been used in the past. Direct the administrator to begin quarterly reviews of senior staff and reboot council working sessions to get updates from your senior staff and give you and the public the opportunity to ask questions. 3, finally set a timeline. I find it ironic that this resolution repeatedly emphasizes accountability, but itself fails to mention any timeline. Please give staff a deadline to pull together a one-pager on current versus best practices in performance management and data transparency. and work out a rough timeline for achieving the rest of the steps in your resolution. Please start the accountability now. I want to add that putting this prioritization and dashboard process in place, which will take several
Time.
months, is not an excuse for continuing the lack of progress on critical issues like zoning and housing and the backsliding on road safety. Thanks for your time and attention and moving forward on the timeline for this resolution.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Lowe.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from East Southeast East Ann Arbor. I'm calling in today with mixed feelings about DC2, the traffic calming program. On the one hand, this is a good start, and I really appreciate that. It really is a good start. But on the other hand, it reads to me as quite timid and honestly insufficient. First, I'd like to see the inclusion of an explicit mention of life-saving pedestrian and bicycle safety devices, bollards, in the list of speed control elements allowed. As despite being a part of NACTO guidelines, the city appears entirely unwilling to do the trade-off of some potential damage to a car that has left the roadway in return for the enormous benefit of not killing someone. Frankly, I don't see how this is a hard decision. Bollards are all over the rest of the world, and within the US alone, I have personally seen them in Los Angeles, San Diego, Chicago, Nashville, and even in our own backyard in Detroit. In fact, I looked on Google Maps and double-checked with some articles, and as it turns out, our city's #1 rival, Columbus, Ohio, has real bollards, not just flex posts, at their OSU sports complex. We really going to let Columbus beat us? One such location where bollards, especially removable ones, would be a huge improvement is the new Purple State Street. If we aren't willing to make this area the permanent pedestrian plaza that it really should be for the safety of everyone, we should be, at minimum, be willing to protect people, be they on foot, in wheelchairs, on bikes, on roller skates, from multi-thousand-pound metal devices hurtling at them. Additionally, this resolution should be a bit more authoritative when removing the requirement of council approval for traffic calming projects. That's a great start, but any street maintenance that includes vertical elements or resurfacing should be required to include traffic calming and safety measures.
30 seconds.
Not to include elements like sidewalk level crosswalks, pedestrian protecting bollards, and protected bike lanes should require staff to report why they have chosen not to include them. This is especially important for school routes.
Time.
Around most middle schools, the streets tend to have two states. Either they're quiet, peaceful neighborhood streets, or they're
Thank you.
hellscapes with people driving like maniacs.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathy Griswold.
Good evening, Council. I was dreading coming out today. I just returned from 10 days in Incline Village, Nevada, but I found the speakers both entertaining, informative, and I agreed with most of what they said. So this is great. It seems like young people are starting to agree with me, or I'm starting to agree with them. Anyway, the theme of my talk tonight is unintended consequences. Sometimes unintended consequences are just inconvenient, but as a prior speaker mentioned, sometimes they result in death in a roadway. Regarding traffic calming, I think it's absolutely critical that we look at the unintended consequences. If we are putting traffic calming on one street, we need to look at the parallel streets, and that is something that Sam Schwartz recommends. Sam Schwartz, a consultant who did Vision Zero. There's an excellent example of what they did with the busway on 14th Street in New York City. So we need to be more methodical in our implementation and consider those unintended consequences. Next, we need to look at school crosswalks. I brought this forward at the last meeting, and I was really concerned about overgrown vegetation because that's one of my pet peeves. But the first three people I showed it to said, why isn't the crosswalk marked? And it's like, I don't know. And then I checked, and the crosswalk design guidelines, which we spent considerable time on, definitely specifies that it should be marked. And so, again, an unintended consequences, we overlook this, and when I went down there today, I counted over 50 cars that were parked along this area, including right through the crosswalks, because I don't think parents even knew it was a crosswalk because it wasn't marked. My last area is that we are wrongly charging people and endangering pedestrians. And one example is the corner of Beeks, Kingsley, and Main Street. There was a Greyhound bus driver who hit a pedestrian. I've gone down there, I've looked at it, other engineers have looked at it also. It is humanly impossible to see a pedestrian in that crosswalk because there is inadequate lighting at the crosswalk, and there are bright globes that the DDA put in just beyond that. So you're looking at a glare, and you can't even see a pedestrian there. So I hope that you will implement safer crosswalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Tom Stolberg, phone number ending in 534. Press star 6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg calling from Lower Town in Ann Arbor. Calling about C811. And like other people, I'll pick a theme. My theme will be expectations. And I talked about this last time, this was at council, that the citizens, when they voted for the affordable housing millage, had certain expectations. And some of that expectation was based on the language of the millage. Some of that expectation was based on things like putting affordable housing units on the old Y lot, which has been talked about for a long time. One of the key reasons that we were going to have city-owned lots that we already own made available for affordable housing to keep the cost down. So the expectations were not necessarily met when we had to find out how much money had been spent to buy the lot that we already own. This was all covered the last time, so I understand where we're at with that now. And there may be good uses for the rest of the money. But again, expectations. The citizens should have a discussion of why the rest of the money is going where it's going, even if it's a good reason. Because we voted on a millage and we have certain expectations of that. While we're talking about affordable housing, we have certain expectations. There's 93 people that we are not housing because our citizens had our expectations broken when the city improperly, illegally approved the Lower Town plan. 93 units or $9 million of affordable housing that was lost in a PUD in disguise. The exact same plan. It's built as a PUD, and there's no reason it wasn't built as a PUD except to avoid 93 units of affordable housing. There's 93 people or more, because it could be more than one person per unit, that are not going to get that affordable housing. Later on tonight, we're going to talk about 33 people, 33 units of affordable housing that you're ready to give away benefiting private interests and not following the law, yet again. When we vote the affordable housing village, we also had discussion about 415 West Washington and not using village money there because that site didn't qualify well for affordable housing in terms of tax credits and other federal reasons because floodplain next to the tracks, et cetera.
30 seconds.
We've broken those expectations, and we're going to use a PUD there. Kind of inconsistent when we say PUD is okay when it's not okay. We're going to use a PUD there to put money into payment in lieu, and then that payment in lieu is just going to get taken off the top, and we're going to get net zero money for affordable housing at 415 West Washington, in part because we didn't follow the expectations that were set.
Time.
So please, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Trisha Duckworth.
If Ms. Duckworth is on the Zoom call, can you please raise your hand by pressing *9? Mayor, I don't see Ms. Duckworth on the call.
Ms. Duckworth, if you're available, please enter *9. Our next speaker is Brandon Dimcheff.
Brandon Dimcheff, you have a comment?
Hi, Council. This is Brandon Dimcheff from West Larrytown in the 4th Ward. I'm calling tonight to thank the sponsors of DC2 and to request that you approve this resolution. Our neighborhood has been frustrated by speeding drivers for years, and while some of our streets have received traffic calming, the existing process for having your road calmed is incredibly cumbersome. Streamlining this process and making it automatic during major road work is a great improvement. Furthermore, this model of choosing safety by default should be applied to other road work as well. I noticed, for example, the recent Packard resurfacing left the lanes excessively wide, didn't buffer the bike lanes, and actually decreased safety by removing the gateway treatments at crosswalks and the green paint in bike conflict zones. It would have been nearly free to make safety improvements during this project simply by painting slightly different lines on the road. We should not leave opportunities like this on the table. DC2 will help fix this in neighborhood streets, but we definitely need some better defaults elsewhere too. So once again, please approve DC2 and consider expanding this to the safety by default concept to major roads in a future resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications today from Council? Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I would like to announce that Councilmember Harrison and I will be having our, what we're going to call, in an optimistic way, our quarterly coffee hour, Monday, September 25th, from 5:30 to 6:30 in the multi-purpose room of the Ann Arbor District Library. Please come. Please come if we haven't met you before. Please come, maybe even if you don't live in our ward, we don't mind. And tomorrow, I want to remind everyone that tomorrow, which is September 6th, just in case everyone is disoriented by the holiday, there will be a town hall regarding the M14 eastbound entrance and exit. And this will be held, it's organized by Senator Sushink, and it will be held at Wines Elementary from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And it will begin with presentations by the city and by MDOT regarding their plans for the exit. And then there will be time for public comment. And honestly, public comment, even though they had bunch of written public comment is still really welcome here because the project is neither scheduled or funded, nor funded by MDOT at this moment. And so anything that they plan to do now, whether they plan to ameliorate it would be great, whether they close it until they can get the project up and running. We're on an uncertain timeline, and so resident feedback would really be appreciated.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick note regarding one of the public comments, the one from our friend and former council member, Kirk Westfall, regarding the resolution to improve data transparency. A couple of things were mentioned. One, the reviews, the performance reviews for the city administrator, and I would add the city attorney as well. And the second thing, work sessions. I wanted to note that both of those things have been discussed at recent admin committee meetings, and we are creating a plan to bring back some work sessions in the future, and we also are embarking on the performance review process for both the city attorney as well as the city administrator. So those things are underway. I just wanted to make sure that that was noted.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note that Councilmember Ghazi Edwin and I will be having our next ward coffee hour on September 26th at 6 p.m. at Mallett's Creek Library. So welcome the community to join us. Thanks.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of announcements. As of September 1st, the playground improvements are done at Almendinger Park. So stop by. There's a log jam thing, a tower of boulders, lots of fun stuff for kids. Also wanted to let people know that staff are hosting an open house to share final designs and to answer questions on the South, 7th, and Greenview Improvement Project. Those were 2 projects before. Now they've been combined into one. So that is going to be September 21st at 6 p.m. at the Pittsfield Branch Library. Nearby residents should be receiving a postcard soon if they haven't already, and information will be posted shortly to the project website. I also wanted to use my time here tonight to say a few words about minimum lot sizes and its role in land use reform. This is on my mind for 2 key reasons. At our last meeting, we approved zoning annex township parcels to a single-family zoning category with a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. And then last week, Councilmember Iyer and I had the chance to meet with the team, the consultants that are helping us with the comprehensive land use plan. I think land use reform is one of the most impactful tools that a city government has to influence housing availability, housing prices, as well as the livability and sustainability of our communities. And minimum lot sizes as a regulatory tool sets a floor for land costs. So large minimum lot sizes of 5,000 feet became pretty standard in post-war suburbs. They've resulted in driving up housing prices and mandating a spread out development and sprawl because fewer homes can literally be built in a space. Not to mention excluding residents that cannot afford the amount of square footage that is required. This might make sense in rural township environment because there's an argument made that you need a large lot to accommodate septic fields and wells for drinking water. But for Ann Arbor, where housing prices continue to skyrocket and we can't meet our housing needs, I think we really need to apply a critical eye to mandates that basically force lot sizes much higher than 5,000 square feet. So the recent annexing decision, that provided a small opportunity to look critically at this regulation, and I hope that we continue to look at this as, we embark on the comprehensive land use process. Thank you.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to firstly thank Dessa Cosma and Chair of CODI, Zach Damon, for your comments in support of the proclamation for Disability Voting Rights Week. I also want to thank Clerk Beaudry for all the work that she has done, which is, it's being recognized statewide for a reason, on accessible and safe voting practices and all the work that you're continuing to do. And I want to note that the proclamation also mentioned that the city is seeking an election center, and I think it will enable us to have even more efficient, secure, and accessible elections. In addition, I want to invite everyone to come out to the 3rd annual Asian Black Solidarity Picnic this Saturday from 1 to 5 p.m. at Montebello Park. It's a great time, and it's just to celebrate the ongoing work that these two communities are doing to support each other. So come out. Thank you.
Councilmember Song.
It's back to school. I'm so happy to see our walking bus in the King School neighborhood continue its work. We have over 20 families who've met for at least the past 10 years who gather and walk and avoid driving and being part of the traffic, because we are traffic. It's a wonderful celebration and tradition. I hope to see that in other parts of the community. I see the kids and the families really enjoying the crosswalk on Glacier, going to King's School, and spoken to our crossing guard, Veronica, who feels safer there's a little median in the middle too, where she can stand and direct traffic. As well as, and then increasingly as the kids grow older, we can see them actually riding their bikes to school too, because they are crossing guards who ride earlier, and with the new bike lanes on Glacier, it's been really heartening to see them use the bike lanes and feel safe to ride with their families. This Sunday, there's a JFS Walk a Mile in My Shoes event in support of refugees. We are expecting 18 additional families coming to Ann Arbor by the end of this month. They'll be the Sunday at Burns Park Elementary from 9 to 1. I will be there as a board member. A note about the Black Asian Solidarity Picnic. This came out of a tragedy 3 years ago where a Vietnamese American man had shot a young black child in Ypsilanti. And I'm really heartened to see that the conversation has moved from what is safety to what is community and reflection on our shared civil rights work with community leaders and community organizers and our children. So we bring our children, we have good food, and it's a tradition. So, and I also want to thank Township Supervisor Mandy Grewal, who is the host of this. And if you come, please thank her also for allowing for a number of housing units in her township. I think Pittsfield Township outpaces everyone else in Washington County when it comes to housing units. September 6th, tomorrow, there's an important meeting. I encourage folks to come and voice their support for additional affordable housing rentals. There's a meeting with the county. The County Urban Executive Committee is meeting at 2 p.m. virtually, and this is allocating $4.56 million from the Home Investment Partnership, our American Rescue Plan funding allocation. So previously, a draft plan had gone out zeroing out the dollars for affordable housing, and now there's it looks like there is an allocation of 40% of that going towards affordable housing. Please voice your support to ensure that that actually comes through. The facial recognition ban work continues. We have additional support from the ACLU and an organization on digital rights and privacy called Fight for the Future. So we're working on additional language and potential implementation. Finally, Guaranteed Income Project site has launched, and that's giga2.org. Thank you. That's a lot.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I just wanted to provide an update for those in the 5th Ward anxious to provide input on the West Park band shell. We have meetings that have been starting to get scheduled. So, and also there's pop-up events. So today's event, there was supposed to be a pop-up scheduled at West Park, but it was because of the heat, it's moved to Friday, this coming Friday, September 8th from 1 to 3 p.m. And there's another one on next Monday, September 11th from 1 to 3 p.m. These are sort of informal times. You can go talk to park staff, provide feedback and get questions answered. There's also a survey that's up on the project website that you can fill out, and that's open until September 18th. And then the first virtual information session, which folks are starting to receive postcards in the mail about that, is going to be on also next Monday, September 11th. The meeting begins at 6:30 p.m. And that will include a broader kind of array of community members and is a more accessible format. And then there's also going to be some in-person meetings that are going to be scheduled for late September, early October. So keep an eye on the West Park Band Shell project page. Also, Councilmember Cornell and I are having our monthly listening hours on Sunday. The next one's Sunday, September 17th at 4 p.m. at the Ann Arbor Arts Center.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, I've read things recently questioning about the comprehensive plan process. I know that this is a massive process that the city is undergoing, and there may be some confusion about it. To be clear, it is going to be taking place over the next 18 months, which feels excruciatingly slow, but is, I think, important to take time. A couple things are coming up very soon for folks to engage with the city to offer input on this process. September 15th, Parking Day. That is a national movement that has a local presence here, and there will be representatives from the city and the city's staff to hear what your vision for the future of the city is. And then the second one, and I hope I'm not stealing Mayor Taylor's thunder, is at the Mayor's Green Fair on September 22nd. So if you come to either one of those, then you will have the opportunity to speak with city staff about the comprehensive plan process and offer some input into it. I think the second thing to note really quickly is that there will be a steering committee that during this process will meet about 5 to 6 times, which is a really important way to be engaged as well, especially if you care about land use and transportation and all the things that make Ann Arbor livable and pretty awesome. Keep an eye out for that on the city's website, and I will be providing updates on that as well as more of those plans materialize. But September 15th and September 22nd are 2 immediate opportunities to weigh in on the comprehensive plan process.
Further communication from council. We have before us a consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The consent agenda is approved with 10 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA 9, 10, and 11. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. To speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific and related item on the agenda. Speakers, both here and online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you, or the timer will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining, and both when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend sections 5.15, 5.16, and 5.17 of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, TC1 uses, auto-related, and TC1 development use specific standards, transit corridor, additional standards. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi there, Council. It's me again. I'm mixed about this again. There's a lot of good stuff here, and some stuff that's not great. Can we please refrain from allowing car rentals and stuff in TC1? We've got a good 90% plus of the city where that's allowed. We've got the entire township areas where that's allowed. Can we just leave it as is and not allow the sprawl of car dealerships, especially the sorts of car dealerships that can actually work indoors, which are typically for much more expensive cars that most people aren't going to be able to afford, and instead focus on, if we're going to be allowing car-related stuff, let's try to focus on things like Zipcar or other sort of short-term car rental services, and maybe even dropping off cars for residents in TC1 areas, so that they don't have to have them parked right in the middle of this otherwise fairly pedestrianized area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I also think that we should keep car businesses out of the TC1 area. The TC1 areas were supposed to be for humans, pedestrians, for people to live there, and allowing car sales and car businesses. Car repair is the opposite of humans. I think that it's been amply demonstrated that cars are the opposite of humans when it comes to the city, and we can't simultaneously design for both. So given the choice, I choose humans. So yeah, please don't allow these car businesses into TC1. It's just a bad idea. It undercuts many of the goals of TC1. So let's not undo what we've done.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, an ordinance to add Chapter 106, Home Energy Rating Disclosure, to Title 8, Building Regulations of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Please just come on up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Tom Renker, and I'm representing the Ann Arbor Area Board of Realtors. And I'd like to just kind of start out and thank you for letting me speak and kind of voice our concerns. When we talked a couple of weeks ago, we talked a lot about the time that's been spent on this, that the Energy Commission has spent many years working on this. We shouldn't be doing this for the Energy Commission. We should be doing this because it's the right thing to do. Realtors have been working on this for a long time. Our first meeting with the Energy Commission was in June 2018, more than 5 years ago. And out of that, two realtors became members of the subcommittee of the Energy Commission, Jack Brown of Howard Hanna and Chrissy George of Trillium Real Estate. They worked with the subcommittee, met many times. They did research work. They contacted other municipalities. They contacted other association of realtors. And the findings of that subcommittee were that, yes, great things come out of this. There's some wonderful statistics and data that comes out of these reports that are very valuable to the city itself. But in the end, there was truly no measurable results, that the buyers, after they received these reports, did nothing with them simply because they couldn't afford it. That, like here in Ann Arbor, we talked about this last time, average sales price year to date, $630,000. Buyers are tapped out. They've spent it. And true, there are incentives available. They can get $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, but to get those incentives, what do they have to spend? Buyers are not going to go further into debt to actually make this happen. So we're sitting here today saying that we're going to force sellers to do something they don't need and will never use by doing the audit. And we're going to have the sellers give it to the buyer. And true, the buyer will have some use for it up front. They'll see another estimate of what it might cost. They may be able to use that number to say, is this good or bad? If I'm looking at a house that's a 1 and one that's a 5, gives me some negotiation power, maybe I choose the 5. Who knows where that 5 is going to be? But the point is that we're forcing someone to do something that they don't really need to do, giving it to someone that won't use it. It just seems like a real waste of some considerable funds that we're going to spend $200,000 to $300,000 a year with the way that this is currently structured. We look at staffing, all-in expenses. This is a big expense. Let's find someone that will actually use these reports. You have thousands of people every year that are putting together building permits. They're hiring contractors. They're a perfect source for an audience, for whether it be a forced or whether it be an offering, to actually use this type of an ordinance or use this type of report for some real value. So I would ask you to really think about this, that, you know, what we're planning to do is not going to help us reach our 820 goals. I mean, Jack and Chrissy, ultimately, they were never asked to come back. They were told they would, they weren't, because they basically were told that what they were saying wasn't really in their best interest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
Yep, it's me again. I just want to say that I really like this as is, both as someone who has recently purchased a house and as someone who is now getting close to selling a house. So, from both of those perspectives, this looks great to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Hi. I also think that this energy rating disclosure is going to be a good thing. I think that it'll have more information out there. It'll raise awareness of home energy. I think a lot of people want to make their houses more energy efficient, and they want to do their part, and they jump straight to putting solar panels on their house and other things like that might not be the most cost-effective way to increase their energy efficiency. And if we have more awareness about weatherization and energy efficient, how to make your home energy efficient, then I mean, maybe everybody doesn't act on it, but maybe some people do. And that's a whole heck of a lot better than nobody doing it. And I don't see any downsides to this. We're not, the buyers and the sellers aren't required to make any upgrades. I think that the land prices around here are not, you know, the housing prices are not such that they'll be tremendously affected by a disclosure saying that a bunch of energy efficiency repairs are going to be necessary, you know, and it's just going to be people having information. It's just going to be the community having awareness, and I think that good things will happen. So please pass this ordinance.
Thank you.
Ross Smith, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yes, I do. I'm calling in support of this. Likewise, as someone that bought recently, this would have been invaluable in my search. But the house I ended up buying had no insulation in it, and was something that wasn't easy to determine from the limited time I had to do an inspection. It definitely would have changed my decision on what place to build, and I expect others would be in a similar boat. Even if it hasn't incentivized others to make the choices, having the information out there gives us some better metrics on how we're doing energy-wise as a city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hello, this is Tom Stolberg again. One of the hats that I wear in the real estate business as a buyer's broker I do not ever represent sellers, only buyers. So my clients would not be paying for this report. They'd be the recipients of this report. My clients now get a home inspection. The vast majority of the home inspections that I have had experience with would call out the low-hanging fruit, best bang for your buck, energy efficiency items when inspecting the home for my clients. If my clients are doing work after they've made the purchase, they're most likely to do the most cost-effective, lowest hanging fruit, best bang for your buck improvements. They've already been told what those are. A comprehensive report might have some impact so that people who would be more aggressive about the improvements that they would make to their home after they buy it, and that would be a good thing, indeed. But the vast majority, in my personal opinion, in my professional opinion, the vast majority of the items that would actually get done are already being identified. I would much rather see this amount of money from our climate action millage be spent in achieving reductions in carbon rather than producing reports that may not be adding any value, or the value may be very low compared to what value is already out there. I would like to see people who aren't necessarily selling their home, but who would be a good beneficiary of our climate action millage money or energy improvements to their homes, get the money to actually make those improvements instead of the money going to inspections and reports based solely on the sale of homes. I don't think we're identifying and targeting the best bang for our buck on our limited funds for our climate action millage.
30
in terms
seconds.
of equity and the tax money. Again, expectations. We have a climate action millage and we expect to be able to reduce the carbon with this, not just produce reports that are essentially redundant in terms of what will actually get done, even though they would be very valuable in knowing what could be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 3, an ordinance to amend section 7602, sections 7604 to 7606, section 7608, and section 7613 of chapter 96, medical marijuana facilities and marijuana establishments of title 7 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers online for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 4, ordinance to amend the zoning map being part of 5.10.2 of Chapter 55 of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, 1601 South State Street, Southtown, rezoning from R4C to R1A, from R4C to C1AR with conditions. Is there anyone in house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Just come on up.
Good evening. I am Margaret Posher. I'm the managing member of Apprentice Partners of Ann Arbor, LLC, and Southtown by Forum, LLC. Based on the most recent campaign of misinformation that has found its way into the zoning proceeding, we find it necessary to clarify the ongoing use of 830 Henry Street and the issue of Airbnbs in our developments. In a Planning Commission meeting held late in 2018, we described the planned use for 830 Henry as being for, quote, young professionals, graduate students, and recent grads. The motivation behind this use was simple: to create a place where this cohort could create a foothold in Ann Arbor as they launched a new job, a new enterprise, or the next stage of their professional education. A great deal of research supported this strategy. 830 Henry passed its certification of occupancy in early 2021. While COVID was the justification for many businesses to completely change their course of direction, especially those that required people to be in close quarters, this use plan was not abandoned. Having made the commitment at Planning Commission to house young professionals, graduate students, and recent grads, this continued to be the 830 Henry occupancy focus. Sometimes these occupants stay for weeks, and many times they stay for months. This commitment included digital tools to attract and invite individuals and startups that fit the use plan. At the end of the day, we realized because of consumer habits that the best method to attract occupants was through the Airbnb booking platform. Simply put, this platform is used for far more than vacation rentals, and people are using it more and more for longer-term rentals. 830 Henry still uses its own digital tools to book occupancy. The vast majority of occupants are U of M graduate students, professors, athletes, and coaches, as well as new startup teams. I don't believe that at the 2018 Planning Commission meeting there was a great deal of concern about what technology would be used to fill the units. I think the concern was, would this development support the housing needs of Ann Arborites? Per current regulation, this means people who live in Ann Arbor for 31 days or more. Some 830 Henry occupants stay for less than 31 days, and many stay for far longer. I would ask council members not to get caught up in hot-button terminology, for example, Airbnb, used by people who are trying to run council from the outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who'd like to speak at this public hearing?
I want to talk about something very positive tonight. My name's Heidi Posher. The Southtown Sustainable Energy System will set a benchmark for sustainable building construction and ongoing clean energy production at a state, regional, and national level. Sustainable benefits of the Southtown project relate to a built environment constructed to optimize energy efficiency and the activation of occupant participation in programs to reduce and preserve energy. The project incorporates renewable on-site energy generation as well as a microgrid designed to coordinate all of these components into a holistic, sustainable energy system. Southtown's designed with enhanced carbon life cycle building materials that include mass timber, a building envelope that accounts for solar and heating patterns across 4 seasons, a geothermal system that exchanges heat between the building and the site to greatly diversify the impact of HVAC load, and green rooftops to avoid the creation of heat islands. The bedrock of the sustainable energy system is Southtown's microgrid control system, which will manage and reduce campus load and optimize the integration of the sustainable energy resources to targeted objectives. This is so important because it provides a level of control that almost every building doesn't have. These objectives, these targeted objectives, include reliability, as in the ability to disconnect from the grid when necessary and allow the occupants to shelter in place, as well as net zero emissions. Under this design, it will actually be possible to run the entire development as a carbon negative footprint. I really want to emphasize that. The objective of the Southtown microgrid design is 100% uptime and carbon negative operation completely eliminating the 3,600 pounds of CO2 emissions that pollute our environment with every megawatt hour of electricity that's delivered. We can do this while still preserving an all-electric campus. Ann Arbor is a clear leader in municipality-driven sustainability in the United States. Southtown presents a unique opportunity for area residents to live their strong commitment to curbing climate change in the most meaningful way possible. I'd respectfully ask council to make sure that we're not distracted by other issues and we're focusing on what really matters here. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ann Berggren, and I live at 1420 Golden in Ann Arbor. And next to me is a building that used to be apartment buildings. There were 8 apartments there. They are now all short-term rentals. And we can surmise then that short-term rentals bring in a lot more money than regular rentals. But it's my position that they take away from housing that is apparently very much needed in Ann Arbor. And so I would like council to pay more attention to short-term rentals and make more housing available as regular rentals for people to live in. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kurt Berggren, I'm her husband, and I also live at 1420, and next door to this former apartment building, which as of, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, became a complete Airbnb thing. It's owned by the people who just spoke to you, and they created this Airbnb place without consulting with us, without telling us anything, and all of a sudden, the permanent tenants were gone. Many of them were our real neighbors. They stayed years. And now we have no neighbors. It's actually 9 units because there's a big unit in the basement. So there are 9 units sitting there in the middle of a residential area that is all Airbnb. And it just kind of popped up, and nobody said anything. The people in my neighborhood don't even know that it's an Airbnb. And so I know that most of you ran for city council on affordable housing in Ann Arbor, more affordable housing. And now you've got 9 units just taken away by these people who I think have been treated us quite badly. And I see them now moving to do something else on this South Park thing. And I noticed that there's 30% Airbnb built into that proposal. And so I say to you, I mean, all of you ran on more affordable housing. And you're doing things that are counterproductive to more affordable housing in Ann Arbor. And I don't know, people tell me that the city council allowed these 9 Airbnb units next to us. And I don't know whether you know you did that. Anyway, it's pretty frustrating for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tim Cernak. I'm a resident of Lower Burns Park, I applaud Marge and Heidi the proposal you put forth. I really applaud the sustainability aspects of it, and I'd love to talk about biodiversity if you ever get interested in that topic. I am very concerned about a rezoning of a residential area below us to something called the campus business zoning, if I understand that. That to me, campus business happens much closer to campus. I'm an assistant professor. I submitted my tenure package on Friday, so I'm in campus, and below campus. I just think that Lower Burns Park I think of as residential, and I worry that by allowing campus business to expand, to start at that bottom edge, it will just tip over everything to become campus business district all the way south of us. And particularly one aspect of the new zoning that I was concerned about is the offsets of zero. There's a zero, no inches of offset is required under the new zoning. The home that I owned prior to moving to Ann Arbor, I lived in Boston before coming here, but I owned a property and lived in Manhattan before then in a neighborhood called Turtle Bay. And in Turtle Bay, there was development, just as much concrete as possible up to the edge, everywhere that you could go. And it had a really different feel to that neighborhood. And so I really, I worry about rezoning south of, that it will just push the campus all the way down through the entire neighborhood of Lower Burns Park. And so that's what I came here to say, but I do applaud all of the sustainability aspects that you've built into this project.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number ending in 345, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kitty Kahn. I live in the 5th Ward. I object to this proposed rezoning. This property is not near the campus business district and should not be zoned as such. The energy advantages touted by the developer could be accomplished under the current zoning. I mean, that's all wonderful stuff, but there's no reason to rezone to do those things. One of the reasons the developer is seeking rezoning is so that they can put short-term rentals on the site. I'm sorry if the developers object to us talking about those things, but it's true. Okay. As we know, our city is in dire need of affordable long-term rentals for our residents, not short-term rentals for visitors. The current zoning would not allow these short-term rentals because the city has ruled that non-principal residents short-term rentals are not allowed in residential neighborhoods. The developer is trying to use rezoning to put in short-term rentals, of which they already own many in our city. They say they will limit the number of short-term rentals in Southtown, but this rezoning would open the gates to more short-term rentals in the area. Please do not approve this zoning, this rezoning. Speaking of zoning, the consultant for the comprehensive land use plan was to start on June 1st, and yet I have heard nothing about it and nothing about any public engagement regarding the new comprehensive plan. There is no current information on the city's website. I heard just tonight that a couple of council members have been meeting with the team. When will the public be involved as we were promised? Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I'm real excited about more housing being built. I'm excited to see the energy efficiency be part of this. I think though that we should remember that larger housing construction is automatically going to be more energy efficient than single-family homes, just because of their nature. It's easier to heat and cool them. It's easier to provide water and power to them than it is to the single-family homes per person, on a per-person basis. Also, I am not concerned about the fact that some of these are going to be used for shorter-term rentals because I couldn't find the exact number, but it's going to be something like 250 new apartments are going to be built there. And if some of those, even if some of those were left totally empty with a middle finger sign on the window, that would still be more housing than is there right now. So if we're worried that there's not enough housing in there, well, then we should let somebody build a big old apartment building with lots of housing in it. This is going to do it. This project is going to do it. Even if some of those people don't stay in those apartments for their entire lives, they're still people, and they can still be neighbors. And so, yeah, energy efficiency, neighbors, housing, it's got it all. Approve this project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 644, do you have a comment? Chris, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Boris. I live at 1726 Charlton in Ward 5. I am going to borrow some words from a former planning commissioner to say that, in my opinion, rezoning the proposed Southtown development from R4C to C1AR is exactly the opposite of what we want. Why is this so? For a rather simple reason. R4C, the current zoning of Southtown, does not allow short-term rental non-principal residence as a primary use. I'll say that sentence again. R4C, the current zoning of Southtown, does not allow short-term rental non-principal residence as a primary use. But C1AR does. In fact, as one of the conditions of rezoning, the developer has offered that Southtown will contain no more than 30% short-term rentals. Furthermore, if Southtown is rezoned to C1AR, it is likely to set a precedent. That means that the city would risk a lawsuit if they were to deny the petitions of future developers seeking a C1AR rezoning in this area. All of this could lead to the Southtown areas becoming a sort of air bed and breakfast land. Is this what we want for our city? No, it isn't. So I would ask City Council, instead of protecting the interests of those who would bring us more short-term rentals, why not protect the interests of prospective long-term renters who would like to make Ann Arbor their full-time home? Please deny the proposed rezoning of Southtown tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Juskevich, do you have a comment?
Yeah, my name is Adam Juskevich, calling from the 4th Ward, and I've been following this project for a while, and I think it's a great project. I think that C1AR is an appropriate zoning for the area since it's adjacent to campus, the athletic campus, and it's across the street from business district. And I think it makes a lot of sense for this to be considered campus-adjacent business district. I think that the building is great. I think adding, 250 some units is great. And I think that I'll be looking forward to seeing Ann Arbor's first mass timber building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luis Vasquez, do you have a comment?
Yes, good evening, City Council and Mr. Mayor. Luis Vasquez from Upper Lower Town in Ann Arbor, and just speaking in support of this rezoning for Southtown to be in C1AR district zoning. I mean, the campus is literally right across the street. I'm not sure, what the opposition is saying. And also, as has been pointed out, directly across the street from a business district. So I think this building checks all the boxes and deserves to be rezoned into C1AR. Thank you for your support and look forward to making more housing of all kinds in Ann Arbor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment?
Yes, good evening. This is Tom Stolberg again. I've written you at length about some of the legal issues here. I want to echo what one of the gentlemen who spoke in person said, that the sustainability aspects of this project are laudable. However, that really is not the zoning issue at hand here. C1AR is not appropriate. It was designed for the campus business district, not nearly anywhere near anything called campus. The words are getting butchered a little bit, but C1AR is designed as a downtown zero setback type of zoning. It's the most intense zoning after G1. So we have what's there's another development called Five Corners that's from State, Packard, and Arch Street. That is in the campus business district. There's a map that shows what the campus business district is, and that's in it. And they're asking for a PUD. So now we have a few blocks of R4C south of there, down to Southtown, which is asking not for a PUD, but for C1AR. PUD would solve all the problems that I identified in the legal issues here for Southtown without creating legal jeopardy for the city and creating the city would be very hard pressed to turn down any C1AR application along State Street across from, not the campus business district, where McKinley and Dewey are, but the athletic complex. With all those athletic buildings, would that not be a natural place for short-term rentals to pop up? Well, if the nature of conditional zoning is, if you approve it for one person down at Southtown, it has to be voluntary. So the next person wants C1AR, and they don't have to ask for the limits at 30%. They can stand mute on any limits of height or any limits on the number of short-term rental units. And it has to be voluntary. You can't make them add those on. So if their application is otherwise valid for C1AR, if you turn them down, you're going to get sued and you're going to lose. That's the real world situation. So at this moment in time right now, you're opening yourself up to that legal jeopardy. Now, you said when it came to by right developments that you didn't even want to hear them. You wanted the site plans to be heard at the planning commission and not come to you because of a similar issue of if you turned them down and they were by right, you get sued and you'd lose. So you just didn't even want to hear
30
them.
seconds.
Well, here you're doing the exact same thing, but you're creating a legal jeopardy for yourself. Conditional zoning is very counterintuitive. You're actually opening the door for other properties between this development up to Arch Street for unlimited height, except for FAR. Lot combinations can be very tall downtown height buildings, and unlimited amount of short-term rentals, and you're not going to be able to stop it. It won't be guaranteed, but you'll be sued and you will lose if you turn them down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ross Smith, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I love everything about this project. The zoning is more than appropriate for this building. Like, it's literally across the street from campus. Touch on the short-term rental thing. I'm actually in favor of that because it gives people that are here for a short term an option that doesn't mean being out by the freeways and needing to take a car in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yo, Council peeps, special shout out to my Ward 3 reps Aisha and Travis. I'm gonna have to hear from me again. Sorry. I think this rezoning is great overall, but I do have one concern, and that is about objective reality. Some of the comments in opposition that we've heard tonight have been mutually exclusive and had contradictory reasoning to each other. Others have been directly in contradiction to other comments made by the same people earlier tonight. Still, others have made assertions that could be directly falsified by visiting the location or simply looking on, any online mapping tool. My preference is OpenStreetMap, but others are available. So, my concern here isn't about this this rezoning per se, but about the fact that that we have this constant barrage of falsehoods that come, and people seem to have ad hoc reasoning to oppose anything that the city council does, including this. How many times do we have to say this is 50 feet away from campus? This is going to increase the amount of housing in the area, etc., etc., etc. It's quite frankly quite tiring. But please support this ordinance. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Brandon Dimshoff, you have a comment? Brandon Dimshoff, you have a comment?
Hello. Brandon Dimchov again from Ward 4, about 3/4 of a mile away from this site. I will try to obey the rules and speak just about the zoning and talk about the site plan at the next hearing. But the question at this hearing is really whether the zoning is appropriate for the area, and I think the answer is a resounding yes. As others have mentioned, it's directly across the street from both the athletic campus and existing businesses. It's totally appropriate to have a mixed-use dense zoning here. If the proposed site plan falls through, it's still appropriate for this zones are, and I hope that someone else would develop the parcel into a mixed-use development. The conditions on the zoning will ensure anything here will be fully electric, lightly parked, and house mostly long residents. Please support this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Goodman, do you have a comment?
Yes, good evening, Adam Goodman, speaking to you from the 5th Ward. First of all, I just want to echo what several other people said. I think the C1AR zoning is totally appropriate on this site. And I think it's also worth noting that the staff report unequivocally said the same thing. So I want to talk about short-term rentals for a second. I think this whole short-term rental versus long-term rental thing is a false dichotomy. We have demand for both in our community. There are a lot of people who come to Ann Arbor for very, very laudable reasons, and they need a place to stay while they're here. Sometimes they need a space to stay while they are searching for long-term housing because our housing market is so problematic. The truth is that we actually need, on the scale of tens of thousands of new housing units in our city to meet the demand that we have. While what we're talking about, last I heard, we have maybe a few hundred short-term rentals. So short-term rentals aren't having a massive impact on our housing needs. But also, I've long been pretty frustrated by the city's habit of putting all of our hotels out on the periphery of town in extremely car-dependent areas. I think that people visiting our city should have the opportunity to properly experience our walkable community and something that we're proud of, rather than feeling obligated to bring even more cars into it. Now, shifting gears a bit, I sort of feel it's a little bit problematic that the developer felt obligated to offer all of these zoning conditions at all. I mean, maybe it's good that they did. Maybe that will make your job easier tonight. But we seem to be in a habit of requiring every development to have a tailor-made and heavily restricted zoning district, either a PUD or by, sort of telegraphing that we want all of these voluntary conditions added, which, is this really the definition of voluntary? I don't know. In any case, this is no way to achieve the scale of change that our city requires to solve its most urgent problems. Again, like I said, tens of thousands of housing units. So I don't understand why C1AR is something that we're approaching with such reluctance here. It's a zoning district that could allow this project and could allow others like it to be constructed by right. The suggestion from some folks seems to be that we need more zoning districts that are more persnickety and restrictive about what
30
uses
seconds.
permitted. I think that's dead wrong. And I hope that this is something that will get addressed in the future in the comprehensive planning exercise. But in the meantime, this conditional rezoning is what's before you. I think it's an excellent project and I hope you'll approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 5, resolution to approve 1601 South State Southtown Site Plan and Development Agreement. Is there anyone in house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number ending in 534. Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Tom Stolberg again. Remaining unaddressed from the conversation so far is the issue that the conditional zoning requested is clearly the type of conditional zoning that the courts rule against. And why they do is very important to both the zoning and the site plan issues. Two of the conditions, one the height and the other the short-term rental issue, they serve the applicant's private interests because the existing status quo, the current zoning, has a lower height limit than that condition and totally bars non-primary residence short-term rentals. So the comparison that's being done in the analysis here is incorrect. You need to be comparing it to what the status quo is. No short-term rentals that are non-primary residents. And a height, I believe, 30 or 40 feet for R4C. Not comparing those limits to the proposed zoning district that's being requested. So they're actually getting more, not less. These are not limits beyond what's currently allowed, the limits to what's currently allowed. They're actually more than what's currently allowed. So this is really being measured incorrectly. Now note, the conditional zoning, say on electrification, that's fine. So in evaluating both the zoning and the site plan, you need to relook. The planning reports are not correct. The comparison is not being done correctly. And you have to reject this. Now, PUD would resolve those issues. So you have a legal remedy available to you. We recall back to the Garnet, which came before council, again with conditional zoning that was inappropriate. That was turned down and came back as a PUD and approved as a PUD with the exact same site plan. So this exact same site plan. And even the number of short-term rentals to be put into a PUD and approved as a PUD.
30 seconds.
But it cannot be appropriately approved as it's been applied for multiple reasons, but I've given you some. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
I'm back. The ramblings will continue until our comprehensive plan improves. You already know my opinion on this, and frankly, I'm pleasantly surprised that there wasn't an audible sigh when Jackie said my name again. I honestly wouldn't blame you, although I would be slightly surprised if it came from our ever so polite mayor. I am mildly disappointed in the site plan, to be honest. The fact that this building has the ability to be energy negative thanks to its solar, while on the surface it is a good thing, leaves me with a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, given how close this is to the center of the city, to downtown, etc. This is the sort of place where we should be having more density than that, more height than that, etc. And frankly, it seems like we don't have that just because of these zoning limitations. But on the whole, that's more something to be addressed in the comprehensive plan, and for the site plan as it is and as our city law exists. I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon Dimshoff, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, sorry, switched headphones here on you. So as I promised, I tried to keep my comments last time just on the zoning. This time I'm here to talk about the site plan. As I mentioned, I live 3/4 of a mile away. I'm very excited to see a mass timber project proposed in Ann Arbor. I hope you approve the site plan tonight. It'll provide much needed housing while being way less carbon intensive. It may be carbon negative. That I don't think any other structures in our city can claim. Despite what others may say, the site plan should not be developed as a PUD. Assertions to the contrary are simply incorrect. The proposed site plan conforms with C1AR entirely, with the minor variance granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The variance was granted in order to allow the developers to provide a free public plaza about the size of the library lane surface parking lot, without going over the allowable building size. A fully conforming site plan here would just be worse because we wouldn't get the plaza space. The conditional zoning that from the previous hearing simply restricts the developer and any future developers from hooking the building up to natural gas, adding more parking, or using more than 30% of it for short-term rentals. Those conditions are not bad and do not require an otherwise conforming site plan to be developed as a PUD. PUDs are for out of the ordinary developments that can't be built in an existing zone. This is not one of those. Please approve the site plan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 150, do you have a comment? Press *6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Hi there, this is Jenny Rogers. I am a Ward 4 resident, and I live right around the corner from the proposed site, and I'm really excited about this housing development. As others have said, we desperately need a lot more housing in Ann Arbor. This brings that, and I am very excited about all the sustainability features that far exceed, altogether any other project that we've seen in the city. So I'm really happy to see this. I hope it gets approved, and it will be a model for other future developments. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 6, resolution to vacate part of the alley in Block 3 of the plat of Hamilton Rose and Sheehan's addition to the city of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers online for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 7, resolution to vacate a portion of East Mosley Street to Assessor's Plat number 30. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers online for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of August 21, 2023. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend section 5.15, 5.16, and 5.17 of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. TC1 uses, auto-related, and TC1 development use specific standards, transit corridor, additional standards. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Briggs.
I wanted to say thank you to Planning staff and Planning Commission for sending us these amendments that we requested last December or January timeframe. As folks who may be listening but not as familiar with the background of this, we have been in the process of rezoning some of our commercial corridors to TC1. TC1 is a new transit corridor district that we are applying along existing transit corridors. The goal of it is to facilitate, encourage, and support redevelopment and infill development to realize mixed-use projects and achieve affordable housing, enable more housing choices, more sustainable forms of development, and reduced resource energy needs. And our first corridor to rezone was Stadium and Eisenhower, then came Stadium, which is what precipitated these questions around amendments, and then next in line are Plymouth and Washtenaw, hopefully. So along Stadium, obviously, we had this is a slightly different area where we've got more residents and a nice mix of locally owned businesses. But one of the things that became clear during that process, and one of the reasons we asked for these amendments, is became clear that we cannot do things like TC1 currently prohibits car share. It prohibits car rental. So if we're trying to encourage folks to live car-light lifestyles or car-free lifestyles, it's nice if they choose to do that to be able to, in close proximity of their homes, be able to walk over and go to a car share and check out a car for the day. But currently that is not permitted. So as folks have rightly noted from callers, unfortunately the UDC combines car sales and rental in our uses, and I think that's something we might want to address moving forward because the point of these amendments is not to encourage car dealerships. Fortunately, the amendments would be by special exception use, so everything would go in front of Planning Commission for review before it would move forward. The other amendment that this brings forward is the ability to do car repair, which folks may say, why would you want to have car repair in an area where we're trying to do less car-centric, become less car-centric? What we know is that services in close proximity to where people live allows them to walk and bike more. So even in the case of car repair, this is something that people can, if they own a car, they have the ability to go drop it off and then walk home, bike home. So I'll give the example for the example of my father. He lives in apartments right behind Stadium. He has chronic health issues, disability, and when he needs to go to get his car repaired, he's going to take it to a locally owned shop just down the street. And instead of calling one of his family members to then drive, go get him, and then take him back home, and then have us go back home, which you can imagine all those different car trips, what he's able to do is walk home. And so, you know, even in this situation, what we're doing is actually enabling less car usage. So thank you.
Further discussion, Councilmember Dish.
Thank you so much for that, Councilmember Briggs, and thank everyone who called in to offer us feedback on these modifications to TC1. So we've heard concern about including sales, and we've included sales in these permitted by special exception use on TC1 in recognition that auto repair often, even typically, is attached to retail. And in addition to some of the points that Councilmember Briggs has just made about people being able to live relatively independently and access services that they need for their automobiles during our transition to fewer and fewer automobiles, I would mention that the circular economy is pro-repair, and that does really need to include automobile repair. So this is partly, I think, what we're having is a philosophical discussion, and I think for some of us, we would like TC1 to be leading the way without cars and with pedestrians and with bicycles. And I love that vision, but I think that we are actually in a transition. And so I think that we have to recognize that people will be hopefully having one car per household, maybe giving up cars and having car shares, but I don't think that we can legislate cars out of existence next year. And so I am okay with the things that are here. I also think that it's important to say that the existing form-based standards in TC1 make it, I believe, safe to permit limited automobile-related uses there. So we have setbacks, we have other pedestrian-friendly features, we have limitations on surface parking, and surface parking can't be between the road and the storefront. I think those things mean that we may get car-related uses that are more palatable. And finally, I want to say that without making this change, there are existing auto-related uses on these TC1 corridors. Of course there are, because they're at the periphery, and so that's where auto-related uses have been. If we do not make these amendments to TC1, the existing auto-related uses become non-conforming, which means that they are frozen the way they are because they will not be significantly updated until they pass out of service. So we would rather, it is possible, I don't know how likely, but it is possible that these places could be renovated before they pass out of service to be more aligned with our TC1 goals. We rule that out if we render them non-conforming.
Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you, and thank you to my two colleagues who've already spoke about this. I, too, when I read this, it hurt my heart to read car sales as part of this, because I think our minds immediately go to exactly what we don't want to see in this corridor. But I see this as very much reflective of growing pains. This is something we want to encourage, and we want to be a model for the city in terms of how these transit corridors work. And I do think, you know, one, to underscore what Councilmember Briggs said, that currently the UDC doesn't distinguish between car sales, car share, you know, and we do want people who want to have a car light lifestyle to have access to a vehicle when they need it. There are times when you need to drive, and making that easy for people to do and to wrap their head around and to remove the fear around being in an area where biking and walking is encouraged, I think is an important I think that's an important part of our infrastructure, and acknowledging what Councilmember Dish said as well is we have to accept that as part of reality, but we also need to encourage the behavior that we want as well by building that infrastructure. I think the second part of it around the circular economy is that allowing people to repair their cars and not have to hop into a car or take 3 different cars or, you know, get multiple cars to go and drop off their car that just seems silly to me as well. And so the ability for people to maintain their vehicles for as long as possible, I think, is really important. And I think it's a financial consideration as well. If you can fix your car versus having to buy a new one, I think that's an important thing for us to think about when we go through this. Do I think that, as this is stated right now, is the end-all be-all? No. But do I think it's a step in the right direction? Yes. And that's why I'll be supporting it.
Councilor Ackman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to my colleagues who commented so far. As I said in the last meeting, I'm one of the people that co-sponsored the initial resolution that got this work going, so I wanted to acknowledge that and to also say that I still support addressing the existing narrow rights-of-way, even though I won't be supporting the addition of auto sales and rental. I saw a perfect example of the narrow rights-of-way today on Stadium. That drive-through bank is going up, and it is right up to the narrow sidewalk, and it just was a reminder to me of, once again, of like how oppressive feeling that is, especially as we want to allow other modes of transportation in that corridor. But I digress. Like I said, I won't be supporting this. I think our primary aim in these corridors is increasing mixed uses, encouraging high density, encouraging alternative transportation like bus, walking, biking, et cetera, and discouraging auto-dependent and auto-oriented uses. I understand the argument that's being made about having things in a walk's reach of where people live. I personally depend on my bike to get around. My husband has the car all day in East Lansing, so when I need a car, I have to rent one. And I do have to go to a distance to get a rental. But I still think that, number one, there's absolutely no reason that we need auto sales in these districts. And number two, if the aim is to encourage folks to travel by bus, which I didn't hear anybody say, bike or foot, by building more density in these corridors, and I think we need to make way for those uses that are more consistent with this aim. And that includes housing, grocery stores, cafes, workplaces. I also noted the response that we got from staff in a memo in response to questions, that they said that the form-based requirements and the parking maximums would be challenging for the construction of new automobile sales and rental facilities. But the uses could be viable if granted a special exception use in an existing building or site. And we know that we have plenty of these sprawling sites. So if we don't want them, and I think that the transit corridor is a deliberate policy move not to, then why are we allowing a special use exception? I also, looked at other transit-oriented development policies in other cities, and it's pretty standard to exclude these uses. So personally, I'm comfortable taking a dive and excluding them here. Thank you.
Further discussion? I'm sorry, Councilor Ryer. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also not going to be supporting this tonight. I would have been comfortable with the car repair aspect because I do understand, the argument there of being able to walk or easily bike or, get to, a car repair facility that is near your home and not way out on the periphery of the city. I could have supported this if we had addressed that first in terms of separating that in the UDC from the car sales, but the car sales is just a no-go for me. The amount of space that's needed to have a car sales lot is just not what we're looking for in our transit corridor district, and so I won't be supporting this.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer.
Councilmember Iyer?
No.
Councilmember Ackman?
No.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
No.
Councilmember Watson? Absent. Councilmember Radina?
Yes.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
B2, an ordinance to add Chapter 106, Home Energy Rating Disclosure, to Title 8, Building Regulation of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Radina. Discussion, please, of B2. Councilmember Dish.
So we've heard a lot of response to this ordinance, and one of the things that we've heard is that people will not use the reports. Well, I did some reading into a number of studies that have been done in the cities that have had these for a while, cities like Austin and Portland and Minneapolis and others. A 2021 study of Austin, which has had its energy score ordinance for 10 years, found that new home buyers are a motivated audience for these scores, and they typically spend an additional $4,000 on home improvement projects in the first year of ownership, compared to the annual spending of existing homeowners on energy, that is. In Portland, Energy Trust recently conducted an analysis on homes which had received a score between 2017 and 2019 through its home sales disclosure program. And of these homes, over 2,000 applied for incentives for energy efficiency measures, and these upgrades resulted in almost 1 million kilowatt hours of electricity savings and over 60,000 therms in natural gas savings. The city of Ann Arbor, so our homeowners may well use these reports. The city of Ann Arbor will certainly use these reports, just as the aforementioned cities have used them, to identify the kinds of repairs they should be recommending that all residents undertake. Such recommendations are important for cities like ours, where the housing stock is older. The city will also use these reports, as these other cities do, to address and remedy energy inequities. The data we will gather through the home energy scores will help us determine which households have greater need and can benefit the most from city-sponsored grants to make energy improvements. Some of you may have also heard a suggestion that we link the home energy score to building permits pulled at the time of a renovation. I see this as a both and, because we are talking about different populations, people buying versus people renovating. I also agree that we do need to find a way to bring existing homeowners into this program. And I'm not a lawyer, but I worry that it may not be legal to do so via the building permits, given that the state of Michigan does not give cities autonomy over the building code. Possibly we could offer free home energy scores for people doing certain smaller scale renovations. As for those doing larger scale renovations, we expect and hope the state legislature will pass energy efficient updates to the building code, which will mean that larger scale renovations will make buildings significantly more energy efficient. So I will be voting for this, and I am pleased to see it coming before us after the work that has gone into it.
Councilor Ghazi-Edwin.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as I previously shared, I am in full support of the intended goals of HERD. I agree that we need to do everything that we possibly can in our fight against climate change. My concern with this ordinance has always been its potential to increase racial and economic disparities in the home buying market among those who are more likely to have low energy efficiency scores and who are less likely to have the money to make upgrades. These individuals are likely to be our neighbors who are low income, on a fixed income, people of color, people with disabilities, and those with other marginalized identities. My concerns are supported by the A20 plan itself. On page 52 of our A20 plan, under equity impact of HERD, I quote, "Lower income homeowners may suffer lower sales prices for their homes if they have inefficient homes. Rents may rise for highly efficient rental units, which may further exacerbate race and economic and income disparities in the community." So I believe tracking data is essential in the implementation of HERD, as is prioritizing those with the highest need for funding assistance to make energy upgrades. I will be voting yes on this tonight, but I also will be working with OSI and my council colleagues to create a resolution that I hope will address proactive targeting of residents who are low income now, before HERD goes into place, encouraging them to undergo a free assessment and providing them with the financial assistance that is available to them. Prioritizing these type of homeowners in general once the program launches, and that a plan be developed for comprehensive monitoring, evaluation, and tracking of low energy efficiency scores, where they are overrepresented, the demographics of these areas, and other criteria which will help us assess potential unintended consequences, and to hopefully create a reporting mechanism back to council and to the public on the impact of HERD. Thank you.
Discussion? Sorry.
No, it's okay.
All right.
It's a lot.
Further discussion? Councilmember Rodino.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I just want to, we have spoken quite a bit about this, so I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to, again, acknowledge the amount of work that's gone into this and the thought that's gone into this, not only from this table. I look forward to working with my colleague from the 3rd Ward on future resolution, but also from staff who's been really engaged in pulling in community stakeholders to inform this ordinance and to make changes to it throughout the process. I do think that process, while long, ultimately improved the ordinance that I hope we will adopt tonight. I too just want to echo that I think having this information as a home buyer is important. It's something that, when I purchased my home, I did an inspection and I got a list of things that while passing the inspection would likely need to be upgraded in the next couple of years, or things that could be improved now but didn't necessarily provide a failed inspection. Having that information on things that are specifically related to energy and to the savings that I could have if I made my home more energy efficient. As I looked at the list of things that could be updated in my existing inspection, I looked at the ways that over the next few years I could continue to implement some of those. I prioritized some of them as things that I knew would be coming, and knowing that there are things that could impact how energy efficient my home is, how that may reduce my electric bill, how that may help to contribute to our goals of becoming carbon neutral, would rank on my list of priorities. And so having that information available for a home buyer, I do think is important. And so for that reason, I'm going to be supporting this tonight.
Further discussion? Councilor Song.
I was reflecting on the comment that these reports would not be used, or what is the use of them if it's not useful in the process of selling or buying. And I was thinking about how home buyers in the city have begun to ask if their home has racial covenants. So what's the value of, what kind of value does that present in the home buying and home selling process? What kind of home buyers are asking about the history of their homes? And then how does that reflect on our community values? So I don't think it's a dollars and cents transaction necessarily when we talk about these things, when we talk about energy and conservation and our environmental commitments, much like how I would hope that we can sustain our commitments to being open and honest about the histories of our neighborhoods. And maybe this is a practice that can come into use and come into demand as we learn about how our neighbors come to be our neighbors and what kind of values they present in this process. I would hope that all future home buyers would ask, are there racial covenants in my home? What is that history? How do I remove them? As we know, there's a project currently underway to remove them in certain neighborhoods. But sometimes people don't know that these exist. And I'm hoping that what we're offering for free through the city, God help us on capacity, can help motivate maybe similar thinking. I'm in support.
Further discussion? For my part, I'm excited that this is moving forward. I think it's going to be, very useful for sellers to know what they're selling, for buyers to know what they're buying, and for the city to know where we can be most helpful. As folks know, and as folks has heard, and I think as will be expanded further by subsequent resolution and both council and staff action, we have resources and to help accomplish a just and equitable transition to a carbon neutral community by the year 2030. And we can't accomplish that without providing direct assistance, both in terms of dollars and guidance to residents. And we are going to, I believe, under current policy and future policy, make sure that we're doing those things where they are most effective, where they both hit energy efficiency goals and our equity goals. These things are crucial to the enterprise. We will have resources through our community climate action millage to affect city rebates. Those will be layered, of course, upon Biden-Harris Inflation Reduction Act existing rebates, which we will help residents understand and, by extension, access. Information of this kind, I believe, will be a net positive, but I am doubly excited to know that we are going to be taking intention, or I'm assuming, should this resolution come to us and be passed as I expect it ultimately will be, that we will have a high degree of intentional information with respects to its effect, and so that we can improve and iterate. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. B3, an ordinance to amend section 7602, 7604 to 7606, section 7608, and section 7613 of chapter 96, medical marijuana facilities and marijuana establishments of Title VII of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of B3. Councilmember Dish.
I don't know if it's controversial, but I'll just be very quick. So we are asked to amend the city code for two reasons: to align it with changes in the state law, and also to simplify the application process for applicants and the administrative procedures they face. So what has happened is that the Marijuana Regulatory Agency at the state level has added a new Class A microbusiness, which allows more plants and allows the purchase of products, but does not allow processing. So Class A microbusiness facilities are allowed to grow up to 300 plants, which is twice what the existing microbusiness, the previous microbusiness would allow, and they're allowed to purchase marijuana-infused products from a processor. So the city would be adding Class A microbusiness to its existing microbusiness, so that we allow everything here that the state allows, and I think that's all you really need to know.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. B4, an ordinance to amend the zoning map being part of section 5.10.2 of chapter 55 of title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, 1601 South State Street, Southtown rezoning from R4C to C1AR with conditions. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of B4. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. We are asked to rezone 10 lots that total 1.66 acres, which are located south of East Stadium Boulevard between South State Street and South Industrial Boulevard in the central part of the city. The rezoning will be from R4C to C1AR with conditions. This rezoning will allow considerable greater density on these parcels. The parcels are currently multifamily residential, and they currently provide 38 rental units. Rezoning will allow construction of two multi-story towers for a mixed-use building totaling 22,000 square feet that will provide approximately 215 apartments, where currently there are 38. And it will include ground floor retail, office, and childcare space. Now, I would like to clear up an unfortunate misunderstanding that has raised some unnecessary fear about this project in the community, some of which we have heard expressed tonight. Council's approval of Southtown would not obligate us to approve future applications for C1AR zoning in the area of Southtown or in any other area of the city, and it would not open the gate for a flood of STRs in that area or in any other. There is no such thing as an application that is otherwise valid for a zoning change. Zoning changes are considered on a per petition basis, and any decision we make tonight is not automatically precedent setting for other parcels. I am not a lawyer, and neither is the caller who spoke to this point, but I do not believe that our vote opens the city to legal jeopardy, and I believe that I have been well advised on this point. We are not we do not believe that a PUD would be appropriate for this project, because PUD should not be used when there is an appropriate zoning category. And in this case, there is one, C1AR. This project is across from the University of Michigan golf course, in the neighborhood of the stadium, and across from a business district. The developer offered 4 conditions. 1, limiting the maximum height for the property to 100 feet. C1AR has no limit. The maximum number of vehicle parking spaces for residential use on the property will be 1 per dwelling unit. The principal use of the property shall be multiple family residential, and no more than 30% of the units may be short-term rentals. The property shall have no natural gas connection except for emergency backup power. All but the provision limiting STRs were part of the site plan that the developers brought to the Planning Commission, so they were very happy to offer these conditions. And they were happy to offer the one about STRs as well. Now I am going to do some math, and this is a little dangerous, but if the development maxes out the 30% STRs, that will be 64 to 65 out of 218 units. 218 minus 65 gives us total residential 153. I don't have total confidence in that number, but I think it's pretty close, which is a net gain of roughly 115 units over what is currently on the site, which is, as I've said 3 times now, 38.
Councilmember?
I am done.
Further discussion. Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you, Councilmember Dish. So, since we are considering the rezoning, and I have to consider that separate from the site plan, which is outstanding, and we'll talk about that next. I am really grateful for the local development team that has made my decision really easy tonight. Questions have been raised along throughout this process, and about, will this be housing? Will it be sustainable? Will it meet with our goals? And not all of that is built into C1AR. In fact, it doesn't require housing. So to remove 38 units of housing and have no guarantee of housing being built there should something happen and the site plan doesn't move forward, it makes it really easy for me tonight to be able to vote on this because conditions have been placed on this. And so, as Councilmember Dish already read them, for me it is it's wonderful to be able to see that there's not this property, regardless of who develops it, will not have natural gas connections. That the principal use of the property shall be multifamily residential, and no more than 30% of the dwelling units may be short-term rental, and that there is a maximum number of vehicle parking spaces for the residential uses. So all of this is very much aligned with our goals. It makes it really easy to approve this rezoning tonight, and to be very excited about being able to approve the site plan as well.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is in the 4th Ward, and I wanted to thank everyone that spoke about this. Someone brought up us, I guess I'll just speak for myself, running on affordable housing. And, I ran on a platform of providing more housing of all types. People who work in affordable housing will be the first to tell you that we need more housing of all types to meet our affordability crisis. And in fact, I recall several months ago, when the topic of this development came up, I'm pretty sure that City Council got a letter of support from Avalon, who is the next door neighbor to this development. So all that is to say that I think this is in alignment with our desires to provide more housing. Councilmember Dish already went through the numbers, which I was prepared to speak. This is a net gain in housing. The needs that they plan to provide for in the shorter realm, and I think it's probably important to specify that short-term rental is defined as 30 days or less. But we do have a lot of people that come into our community that need a longer term but shorter than a year stay. Personally, I housed a postdoc in my house at one point when I was a graduate student. We have visiting scholars. We have people that are making use of our hospital. We have people that are having extensive repairs done to their house that need a place to stay. Not to speak of all of the, startup development people that I think that these developers are interested in. So I think, this is a need that needs to be met. I think this development's exciting. I'm a little dismayed at some of the comments about, I think that there's been a lot of fear mongering. And I think as a result, you're hearing people react to that about this being a slippery slope. And I certainly understand that people don't want to be surrounded by transient residents in the neighborhood that they've put roots down in. But again, we're deciding on this parcel, the set of parcels. This isn't a decision for all of Lower Burns Park. And so anyway, I'm looking forward to supporting this.
Further discussion? Councilmember Song.
So I began this meeting reflecting on refugee families coming to Ann Arbor, much like how my own parents were welcomed in the 70s. The difference is that many will be housed in hotels and the few rentals that can be found for families. Another difference is that American families are not welcoming them into their own homes during a pandemic. So we know Southtown might not meet refugees' immediate needs either, unless, say, they employ refugees and other low-income residents. So what's the connection? The connection is that we cannot truly be a welcoming community without addressing housing supply, all types of housing. Our housing crisis has become a game of musical chairs. We do not have enough chairs. No one moves when the music plays, not unless they are paid above market rate. And no one is giving up their chairs for below market rate or what they originally paid. And when the university snatches those chairs, we invite builders to build benches next to a stadium that nearly doubles our city's population with every football game, next to a stadium that has been in place in some form since 1927 or for the past 96 years. Thankfully, that work will also bring additional taxes as investments to our affordable housing millage. Let me also add that I'm extremely grateful that this site will include childcare. Federal pandemic childcare funding expires on September 30th. By one projection, 70,000 childcare centers will close around the country. But to know that a center will be opening here when schools still struggle to bring back pre-pandemic before and after care, that's community building in a state that is supposed to be growing our population. So I want Ann Arbor to be a testament to what's possible for our state and our community, a welcoming community, a growing community, a community that anticipates current and future needs. I am in full support of this rezoning.
Further discussion? For my part, too, I'm excited about the prospect of this rezoning. I think it hits so many of the notes that we're trying to accomplish with the community. It enables us to build it enables property owners to build multifamily housing, to expand the housing choice within our community, and the conditions that are applied in the context, I think, also advance a large number of our community's goals. It is a project that, well, we'll talk more about the site plan because I agree, as Councilmember said, it's awesome. Further discussion of zoning. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DB1, resolution to approve 1601 Southtown Site Plan and Development Agreement. Goodness. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of DB1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. It is awesome. The site plan proposes 2 multi-story towers on top of a single-story podium, creating a development with over 200,000 square feet, including ground floor commercial and resident amenity space. And as I mentioned before, there will be 1 auto parking space for every 4 apartments, which is a ratio we really like because it's not a high ratio, and 1 bicycle space for every apartment, which is another ratio that is great. One of the speakers at the public hearing raised a concern about setbacks. The building will have front setbacks along its 4 street sides, ranging from 5 to 10 feet at a minimum. The front setbacks are greater than that in many locations because of the variations in the building design. The building will also meet Ann Arbor's downtown street design manual guidelines for destination streets. And if that sounds abstract to you, let me put it differently. We use this design to ensure a hospitable environment for pedestrians and cyclists and leave room for other things that make pedestrians cool and happy, such as street trees. This building will provide at least 19 feet from the back of the curb and the building face. It also, as has been mentioned, has a public pedestrian plaza and green roofs. The site plan provides for sustainability in 3 major ways. It is an all-electric project, which, as we heard earlier, will be achieved by geothermal and solar. It uses mass timber and cross-laminated timber sourced from sustainably managed forests. This is a building structure that continuously stores carbon and may remove approximately 1,700 metric tons of carbon from the air, which is equivalent to over 4 million miles driven by gas-powered cars. I hope that's right. And 4 million seems big, but I think it's true, yes? And it is ideally located for multimodal transportation.
Further discussion? Councilmember Adina.
Thank you. I always hate to follow Councilmember Dish on things like this. I was frankly just a little surprised to hear some of the opposition we heard tonight. Some from folks who have a long history of opposing additional housing in our community, but with this specific suggestion that we should oppose this project, which will result, as we heard, in a considerable net increase in housing in the area by actually suggesting that we need more housing. I'm really excited to support this tonight because it does exactly that. This is an all-electric, solar-powered mass timber building that aims to be carbon negative, that will be carbon negative. I'm excited about the ground floor commercial that will provide amenities for the neighbors within walking distance or just downstairs from where you live. I'm excited for the considerable additional housing that Southtown will provide to our community in this area. I think that this is a really easy vote. I agree with my colleagues who said that. This is exactly the type of development and vision that we're looking for in new housing for our community. And I'm just really grateful for the community-centered team that worked to build this. We often hear a lot of scare tactics about developers who are investing in our community, but you can find this development team right around the corner at Venue quite often. And so I am really excited for the work that's going into this. I know that it's a project that has the future of our community in mind, and I'm just really grateful to have the opportunity to vote for it. Thanks.
Councilmember Song.
There's a really great staff report from May 16th that was included in the agenda, and of all the graphics and staff comments in there, the thing that really stands out is that this project increases the development of the block about 3 times over what is currently allowed. 3 times is great. I will take 3 times. So you had me at density. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I also will be enthusiastically supporting this tonight. I just really want to give a kudos to the development team who, as Councilmember Briggs mentioned, have been available for any questions that have come up, who have put together a project that is checks every box I can think of in terms of what we're trying to achieve with our climate goals, with our housing goals in the city. Yes, a small number of these will be what we consider shorter-term rentals. There is a need for that in our community as well, and I think that we can't deny that, and I appreciate that they will provide for this while also providing the vast majority as longer-term rentals for people to live in our community. I appreciate, again, I just want to circle back to the development team and just say these are the types of developers who live in our community, who share our community goals with respect to climate action, with respect to density and affordable housing and all of that, and are there for questions, if they arise. So I do think it's unfortunate that some misinformation stirred up fear among the near neighbors, and I think as Fourth Ward council members, it'll be our job to try to sort that out a little bit, but I will, again, be enthusiastically supporting this tonight.
Further discussion? Just to echo my colleagues, I am grateful that this is coming forward. I'm excited about a whole bunch of new neighbors down on South State, and I'm grateful for the development team who has clearly been watching what we're trying to do in the community, working with the community and being of the community, looking to build housing, looking to make it sustainable, and looking to build a place that becomes a micro community within a larger space. It's going to be, I think, a project that is a credit to the neighborhood and a credit to the city, and I'm delighted that we're able to move it forward tonight. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DB2, resolution to vacate part of the alley on Block 3 of the plat of Hamilton Rose and Sheehan's addition of this to the city of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Adina. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. DB3, resolution to vacate a portion of East Mosley Street in Assessor's Plat number 30. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, second by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion, please, of DB3. Councilmember Briggs.
Since this is likely to be one of the only times this kind of comes to the council table to express an opinion on it, this East Mosley Street vacation, I'm definitely in support of, but I do think it's an opportunity to discuss a little bit or at least make a brief comment regarding the University of Michigan's plan to do new residential housing in this area in a phase 1 and phase 2, which we definitely need more residential housing. We need new housing for students, and they have been negligent, the University of Michigan, in adding more housing for students here in the community. So this is a definite need that's being met. However, particularly phase 2, in which property was acquired under threat of eminent domain and is being taken off of the tax rolls, has implications for the city. It has implications for the future of, the what's going to be flowing into our general fund had this been redeveloped by the private sector. And this was done by the university without conversation with the city about the implications of this. And so moving forward, I would just hope that we have more open dialogue about what how we together meet those needs and developing those strategies. So I appreciate that we have regular meetings now with the university to be able to share those, share ideas and have this dialogue. But there are implications for this that, we need to be aware of moving forward.
Further discussion of DB3? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. DS1, resolution authorizing summary publication of Ordinance 2325 and ordinance to amend sections 5.15.16 and 5.17 of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor to aid categories of auto-related uses and modifications to transit corridor district additional standards. Moved by Councilmember Dis, second by Councilmember Redina. Discussion, please, of DS1. Councilmember Briggs.
What it is.
Ms. Beaudry?
This is just authorizing the clerk's office to publish a summary of the ordinance because of the length.
Sorry, I...
Never worries. I err with sufficient frequency that it is never, Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to appoint Neil Alike and Janet Hayes and Roderick Green to the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. Moved by Councilmember Harrison, seconded by Councilmember Adina. Discussion, please, of DC1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Let's take a short break. It's, what time is it? 39. Let's come back at 49. after a short break. DC2, resolution to adopt an improved neighborhood traffic calming program, moved by Councilmember Ackman, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Ackman.
I am absolutely ecstatic to bring this forward because it's been a long time coming. So this comes to us from a resolution that was passed at the last Transportation Commission meeting in August. And this is one of the first things that I started to work on early in my term on council. I think it's work that began before I was on, when Councilmember Briggs was the liaison on the Transportation Commission. So this is the work of a subcommittee that was tasked with looking at how we might improve the neighborhood traffic calming program. And it was kind of the perfect thing for me to get involved in because I ran, on a commitment to prioritize safe roads for all. So we have a long list of traffic calming projects and requests, and I know that personally my inbox fills with a lot of complaints about speeding on neighborhood streets and other dangerous behaviors like not stopping at stop signs, using streets as cut-throughs to avoid traffic lights is a recent one that I heard about. And so we know that the demand for this is high. Also, community engagement around capital improvement projects indicates a high demand for slowing vehicle speeds and improving the comfort on our local streets. But where the problem exists is that the process as it exists now is pretty onerous, and it doesn't allow staff to incorporate well-established tools for traffic calming in road construction projects where calming is needed unless and until residents engage in a separate petition-led process. So one example of this is the Greenview project. Greenview is very close to my house. It's a street that runs between Scioto Church and Stadium, so it's used as a cut-through. It's also extremely wide. It runs straight. It has no stops between one side and the other. And so speeding has long been a problem on that road. So when they were engaging the neighborhood process of engagement, they came to the residents and said, we know that there's a speeding problem on here. We have these goals in our transportation plan to make the road safe. So we need to slow the traffic. However, there's this whole set of tools that we cannot use, including speed humps, any vertical elements, basically raised crosswalks, speed tables, because that is exclusively the domain of the neighborhood traffic calming program, and that is a separate process led by petition. So this is an issue, that doesn't make a lot of sense to residents, that there's a whole set of tools that are basically effectively put off to the side and not available except through a separate process. So the whole goal with this resolution is to simplify the approval of projects that are part of the petition process. So we're maintaining that process, but we're also empowering staff to include the full range of established calming elements that come from NACTO and other respected organizations for any projects that significantly disturb the road service, and paying particular attention to roads that are part of the All Ages, All Abilities network that are identified in the transportation plan, roads that are in a school walk zone, roads where a record of crashes, speeding, or resident complaint exists, or otherwise suggest a need for calming to enhance the comfort and safety of folks on the street, regardless of petition status.
Councilmember?
Sorry, I'll stop.
Further discussion. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up. This, as Councilmember Ackman mentioned, has been a process that's been going on for quite some time. The Transportation Commission approved starting the subcommittee in August of 22, and the subcommittee started meeting in November. And I think we anticipated that it might be a little bit of a quicker review than it turned out to be. I'd really like to thank staff for engaging so thoughtfully with us on this, and how many staff members actually participated in this process. There was a lot of back and forth, and a lot of making sure that we really understood kind of what the implications might be of making certain tweaks, making sure we're not overextending certain programs to achieve other goals. So anyway, this is taking neighborhood traffic calming, putting it more as an administrative function as it should be. Traffic calming projects will still, of course, the contracts will still come to council for for council approval, just like other contracts. But what we don't need to be doing is having staff have to come to us every time there's a tweak in the program that they want to make. And we know that this is a highly popular program in our city. Of the things that I get calls on and request for more of, it is traffic calming. And I have to tell folks to wait in a long queue. And so this, we're sort of addressing that piece of things, but we're also making sure that we begin integrating it with the other capital improvement projects that we're doing, so that when we go in, we assess that street and identify what are the appropriate, identifies what are the appropriate tools for being able to address concerns that have come up in that neighborhood before, and instead of directing them to a program that's going to, maybe not be something that happens for 3 years or more. So I think that this is something that is very much in line with the goals of our transportation plan, and I appreciate all the folks that engaged in this process with us.
Councilmember Cornell.
I was really excited to see this on tonight's agenda. I will echo what my colleagues have said about the volume of correspondence and messages that we receive about traffic calming. Someone mentioned earlier unintended consequences, too, of road improvements. We experienced that in Ward 5 when a traffic pattern around 7th Street changed and, people started flying down Washington and some of the other streets to get down Huron faster since you can't turn left there now. And so we've seen a lot of that. And I think being able to address it at the level where we can show that we're listening and we're responding in a way that is not, quite frankly, really frustrating and make it feel like the system is working against versus for our citizens is a really important step forward. I think this is an important step forward in our A20 goals. We want to institute traffic calming to make our roads safer for all types of commuters, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And so I would love to be added as a co-sponsor to this. I'm really excited to support it tonight.
Further discussion? Councilor Ackman.
Because I didn't get to fit it into my very long commentary the first time around, I also wanted to thank staff. They spent so much time, and also, members of the Transportation Commission, my colleague, Councilmember Briggs. We spent so much time going back and forth, really trying to get this right, and staff were, spent a lot of time, and they were also willing to think outside of the box, I think, because some of these things have been long established that, we just don't use those tools outside of the traffic calming program. So I think that I just really appreciate their willingness to engage on this.
Okay, staff. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC 4, resolution to initiate a statue to honor Kathy Kozachenko. Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please. I was just so excited. DC 3, resolution to improve data transparency and performance management. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of DC 3. Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I wasn't going to correct the agenda anymore.
Working my aggressions out against you.
That's right. That's right. So, to talk a little bit about kind of the purpose around this, at our last meeting, we were presented with the Equitable Community Engagement Report, which made a number of recommendations, one of which was to make improvements to our website and make it more user-friendly by improving navigation and creating easier access to information and current data so residents can better understand city processes, decision-making, and be more informed citizens when they do engage. This resolution is aimed at making it easier for everyone to monitor Ann Arbor's progress towards adopted goals, compare ourselves to peer cities, and find relevant data and reports. Many city departments are clearly quite committed to sharing data, but it's often scattered across the website and hidden under project subpages or different city initiatives. And our approach to performance monitoring isn't consistent across the organization, and we're often missing critical information that helps us monitor progress towards adopted goals. So since we're in the process of redoing our website right now, it's an ideal time to address this. We just received the Equitable Community Engagement Report. This resolution directs the administrator to do 4 things. 1, review municipal best practices in performance management and open data, evaluate the city's current approach to data access and performance management, develop an exemplary centralized dashboard that provides residents with an easy access to key performance indicators, community indicators, and open data. And then finally, develop an accessible and standardized approach to performance data reporting across all city departments to enhance the visibility, accessibility, and monitoring of policy goals and key performance metrics. Department websites should include standardized public dashboards as well as an access to open data, maps, and more detailed, regularly published reports as relevant. So I will let maybe Councilmember Ackman share more.
Thanks. I guess I would just add, speaking for myself, I spend a lot of time, especially in transportation-related things, because our comprehensive transportation plan is so new. I spend a lot of time kind of picking through it and seeing, what goals that we have and trying to figure out where we are towards them, especially because I get a lot of people reaching out to me. And we have an impressive array of dashboards around transportation. We've got a crash data dashboard. We've got different dashboards that show crosswalk treatments, but there's sort of no easy way for me as a council member, and it's even more difficult for residents to quickly see what our goal is and how we're doing against it. So that's one of the things that I'm looking for, and I'm hoping that it provides clarity around our progress so that we can, make tough choices about priorities where we need to, but also so that it lessens burden on staff, quite frankly, to keep up with the amount of, requests for information that we have to pass along just because we can't easily access this kind of information. So I think this is a very positive step forward. There are other municipalities that we kind of looked at as examples. So I think there are some good exemplars out there that we could be tracking against that I believe we mentioned in the resolution.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC4, resolution to initiate a statute to honor Kathy Kozachenko, moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Gaziano. In discussion, please, of DC4, Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. And while I appreciate your excitement for this, I would suggest that the last resolution was also exciting.
Oh, I was excited. No doubt. No doubt.
So I am immensely excited to sponsor this resolution this evening, both because of what it means for our city, but also for me personally. Elected in 1974 as a member of the Human Rights Party, Kathy Kozachenko is a trailblazer in queer history, and more broadly, the history of our city and our nation. I have had the incredible privilege of connecting with Kathy several times now, and while she remains an incredibly humble person who has generally shied away from the spotlight since leaving council, she acknowledged her historic accomplishment in her 1974 victory speech when she said, quote, "This is the first time in the history of the U.S. that someone has run openly as a gay person and been elected to public office. Gay liberation was not a major issue in the campaign. Both candidates in this ward said they supported gay rights, but 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago, lesbianism would have meant automatic defeat. This year, we talked about rent control, we talked about the city's budget, we talked about police priorities, and we had a record of action to run on. Many people's attitudes about gayness are still far from healthy, but my campaign forced some people to at least re-examine their prejudices and their stereotypes." Kathy's election helped pave the way for thousands of openly LGBTQ elected officials in the decades that followed her election, including my own and those of at least 1,185 LGBTQ plus out-elected officials currently serving in the United States today. Until recently, with the help of increased visibility from national organizations like Victory Institute and the Human Rights Campaign, Kathy's story was not well known, and historically we as a city have not done a very good job of telling it. Next year is Ann Arbor's bicentennial, and because it conveniently coincides with the 50th anniversary of Kathy's election to this council, it is a perfect opportunity for us to rectify this. This resolution, to begin the process of erecting a statue of Kathy Kozachenko on City Hall grounds in partnership with Statues of Equality and seeking a complementary state historical marker, is in my view an exceptional and long overdue way for us to formally recognize Kathy's place in history and to celebrate the impact her election had on the broader LGBTQ civil rights movement. I hope that my colleagues will support this. Thank you so much.
To echo some of what Councilmember Medina said, nearly 50 years ago, Kathy Kozachenko indeed made history together with the voters of Ann Arbor. She was the first openly gay candidate to be elected to office in the United States, elected by the people to represent the 2nd Ward on Ann Arbor City Council in 1974 as a member of the Human Rights Party. Her story is incredibly powerful, and it is an instruction and courage. Though her work remains unfinished, it is right that during our bicentennial we honor her and we express our righteous civic pride in the fact that Ann Arbor is the home of her incredibly important accomplishment. In addition to that fact, we look the fact that we look to recognize an historic Ann Arborite, an historic individual. I'm delighted that we are poised to contribute to the increase of public statuary that honors women. By some counts, less than 3% of public statues depict women. This condition denigrates the experience and contribution of women over the generations, and we as a culture need to remedy it. I look forward to working with Statues for Equality, a well-known organization of artists devoted to this purpose, to work with them to right this wrong here in Ann Arbor and to effect a glorious good, and that is to say to honor an accomplishment of a great Ann Arborite on our bicentennial. Councilmember Udina.
Thank you. I would also be remiss, and I know this would be important for Kathy as well, to acknowledge that while we are talking about Kathy tonight, she herself would recognize Jerry DeGreek and Nancy Wexler, who were elected from the Human Rights Party the term before her. And while they were not out when they ran, they came out during their service on council, which helped her to be open about who she was. And so I want to recognize them tonight as well, because they also have an important part in history, and I know that Kathy remains incredibly grateful to them.
Further discussion? Councilmember Iyer.
I'm delighted to support this tonight, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Further discussion? Councilmember Dish.
I also would like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I'm very grateful that this is coming to the desk.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC 5, resolution directing the city administrator to advocate for the Michigan legislature to end the use of 14C certificates and sub-minimum wage in the state of Michigan. Moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion, please, of DC 5.
Thank you, Mayor. So, this is an appropriate resolution to bring right after Labor Day. For those of you who don't know, sub-minimum wage is basically an inhumane labor practice that was originally developed in the 1930s to give people with disabilities jobs to keep them out of institutions. It's the ability for employers to gain a waiver from the state through the Department of Labor called 14C waivers to legally pay employees with disabilities less than minimum wage. It should be noted that it's not legal to pay underperforming employees under minimum wage. And it rests on the assumption that people with disabilities will perform inadequate work. There is quite literally no limit to how little a 14C employer can pay an employee. As outlined in the resolution, more than 60% of 14C employees make less than $3 an hour, and 23% of those employees are paid less than $1 an hour. In Michigan, there are currently 16 employers with 14C certificates and nearly 700 individuals being paid sub-minimum wage. Currently in Ann Arbor, there are no registered 14C certificate holders, which is great. And this resolution is our statement that we strongly discourage employers from seeking these waivers in the future due to our city's commitment to fair labor practices and human rights. This practice also has real economic consequences for our state, considering people with disabilities have already experienced the highest rates of unemployment and poverty. So this resolution is essentially seeking that our city administrator advocate to the state legislature to do what 22 other states in the nation, as well as dozens of others, who are also beginning this process, to phase out the use of 14C waivers by exploring and utilizing various programs called competitive integrated employment programs, also known as CIE. So I welcome any questions that anyone might have. And that's it. Hope you support.
Further discussion of the resolution. Councilmember Harrison.
Just wanted to thank Councilmember Ghazi Edwin for her work on this. And the sub-minimum wage is a discriminatory practice that devalues the work of people with disabilities and limits their opportunities for economic self-sufficiency. I am happy to co-sponsor and support this resolution to help to phase out sub-minimum wage. This is the right thing to do, and it will help to ensure that all people with disabilities have the opportunity to reach their full potential. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC 6, resolution to approve a purchase agreement for 3023 Miller Road for purposes of establishing an election center and building studio space, for the community television network in the amount of $2,800,000 and to appropriate $828,250 from the general fund unobligated fund balance. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Song. Discussion, please, of DC 6. Councilmember Dish.
I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. There can be nothing more important than ensuring that our elections remain secure in the face of really the way so much has changed now that we do absentee balloting on such a scale. And I think it is appropriate that we invest in that for ourselves and as setting an example for others, that this is a new way of participating and it's higher overhead and we must pay it, do that, support it, invest it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Medina.
I too would just ask to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Councilmember Ackman.
Just want to echo what Councilmember Dish said about the importance of establishing and maintaining secure elections. I think it's maybe easy to think that we're immune from the shenanigans that we saw in 2020. We are not. There's so much denialism of elections. Added to that, the increase in absentee ballots. And I think, we can't state enough, which I think the memo did start to, indicate that we just really need to protect, what's the word that I'm looking for? We need to make sure that that the way we run our elections are beyond reproach, essentially. And I think this is needed to do that. So I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Cornell.
To echo the sentiment around shenanigans, I think when we consider how do we increase credibility and how do we, alongside security, it's really important to show that we take this seriously and that we have a top-notch facility that is beyond reproach. I think that can't be understated. And I think that as a deep blue part of the state that has a lot of red in it, I can see how Ann Arbor would be an attractive place for shenanigans. And so I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. I think it's absolutely vital that we make sure that the elections here in our city are models for what we can do, not only in terms for inclusivity and fairness, but also security. It's not a very sexy topic, but I think it's one that's most needed and we should be paying attention to.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I wanted to also, indicate there's very little that we can do at this table that is more important than making sure that we are having that our election process is fair and secure and accessible. As we heard kind of at the beginning of this meeting, the importance of that. I would like to provide an opportunity. This is a huge initiative that we're doing. I'm excited to support the purchase of this property. It's in the 5th Ward, but I think it's going to serve the city at large well. But if staff wouldn't mind, Mr. Fournier wouldn't mind coming up and just speaking a little bit more broadly. I know there's a memo that's attached to this that we've all had the opportunity to read, but for the community at large, this is a relatively new conversation around having an election center and what that means and why that's important at this point in time. So you're going to be the person most equipped to be able to talk to it a little bit.
Well, I'm happy to speak to it. The person who's probably best equipped to speak about it is our city clerk, Jackie Boudry. She has spent a great deal of time educating me, so I'll try to do her justice. With the adoption of reforms in the state of Michigan that allowed an expansion to ballot access to absentee voting and to early voting, the logistical challenges of administering an election in a city like Ann Arbor and across the state have become extremely complex. The majority of our voters vote by absentee ballot now. Before the reforms of 2018, most, if not all certainly, but the vast majority of ballots were cast at a polling place on Election Day. And the counting and sorting occurred in those individual precincts. Now, the majority of our ballots are cast as absentee ballots, which requires like I said, very complex logistical operation to keep voter registration forms, which can now be filled out up to and on Election Day, absentee ballot request forms, absentee ballots themselves, voted absentee ballots, all of the workflows and physical processes to administer these forms have to be physically separated from each other to keep these these flows from intermingling with each other and getting mixed up. And they have to be separated by ward and precinct as well. And so there's a need for an immense amount of physical space to properly administer an election in the state of Michigan now. Before 2018, all of that administration happened right here, actually. The clerk's office behind you and in this council chamber. And it was easily managed. Over the last several elections, we've had to commandeer space outside of City Hall. In 2020, when the public schools were closed, we used the Huron High School gym as an absentee ballot count board space, 4,500 square feet. It was a wonderful place for us to hold an absentee ballot count board, but once the schools reopened, we don't have access to a space like that in City Hall. So we are constantly kind of bubble gumming space together to make sure that we have a secure facility to process these ballots. We've also had to commandeer city facilities to create high security ballot storage, which is not something we've had to do in the past. Every election, we have to change where that location is, which means moving a lot of cameras and, rekeying doors and things of that nature. It would be ideal if we could have that in one space. We also have high precision, very sensitive ballot counting equipment, which is meant to be stationary. But with our current operation, it has to be moved into storage and out of storage to ballot counting locations every election. And so it's important for us to really solidify a space for our election administration. As our elections have changed, as threats to our elections have changed over the last 8 years, it's become very important for us to change how we interface with our election processes as well and kind of modernize how we do things and bring them up to a 2024 standard.
Councilor Song.
I was actually on the executive committee for Prop 3 back in 2018. So for folks who want to travel back in time a little bit, Prop 3 basically authorized automatic election day voter registration, no reason absentee voting, straight ticket voting, and allow basically what our military and overseas voting folks experience when they vote here. And it was so timely, given that the pandemic followed shortly after. And just lowering those barriers to access to vote is supposed to ensure a stronger democracy. And then with Prop 2 passing this past fall, we know that voter turnout, well, we hope, and I think all of us will try to help increase voter turnout with this upcoming election. So I'm excited to see this project come forward. I think we can follow what the governor had announced last week as part of her initiative for what's next. I was at that speech and she spoke to strengthening democracy as being part of her next plans, and that includes supporting Prop 2 last year with more early voting options and decreasing barriers, but securing elections, shoring up election security is her plan of action. So the stars are aligning so that we can strengthen our democracy in Ann Arbor in a building. And I just also want to share that my son was an election worker in this previous election. So, and he came here for a training in the basement and was packed with, I think, one other teenager besides himself and a number of Ann Arbor retirees. So I would love the election training experience to be more comfortable for folks who dedicate themselves to this. in preparation for the elections, on the day of the elections, after the elections. It's a lot of work for folks who were committed to ensuring that neighbors and colleagues come out to share their voice. So I would love to see this space allow for that work to continue. Maybe train more election workers and support Ms. Boudry in a more reasonable fashion than cramming in here while also conducting city business and city operations.
Councilmember Cornell.
Elections are awesome, so is our city clerk. Could you, Mr. Fournier, speak really briefly about, or for as long as you'd like, about the mashup and marriage here between CTN and the election center, please?
Sure. So as we began identifying facilities for an election center, one of the physical attributes you need in a building is large open space. As I said, the absentee ballot count board we had in 2020 was a 4,500 square foot basketball court. In total, the space we need for the election center, I think we estimated it to be between 12 and 14,000 square feet, depending on the configuration. But it was difficult to find buildings of that size that also had large open spaces and didn't need a lot of structural work to open them up. And we realized that if we wanted a building with those open spaces, we need to think a little bigger, and started thinking about other city operations that could potentially partner into this building. And CTN is a natural partner. Something the community may be aware of is a lot of people are cutting their cable cord, and our CTN, community television network operation, is funded with PEG fees, which are fees that individual cable subscribers pay into our CTN fund. As those revenues are declining, we need to find ways to operate CTN in a more economical way. Right now, we lease space. We believe that moving them into this building in a new studio that is purpose-built for maybe a different production future and different operational future for CTN also has the opportunity to save them operating expenses on their facility, potentially more than 50% savings in annual operating expenses. So it's an exciting opportunity for CTN to have new studios and for the CTN fund to be a little more sustainable.
Councilmember Adina.
Thanks, Mayor. Since I used my first speaking time simply to sign on as a co-sponsor, but a couple of my colleagues, what a couple of my colleagues described as, I would say kindly, as shenanigans that might be coming, I want to maybe put a little bit finer point on as we talk about the need for election security as well, because we saw in 2020 the MAGA extremists, the right-wing extremists who tried to disrupt counting of ballots in Detroit. We're actually trying to break down doors and get into that facility. We know that threat continues to exist as we approach another presidential election with the same likely candidate on the Republican side. And then also, again, credit to our local clerk for the election last time, where we had incredible turnout and a lot of enthusiasm around voting and long lines to vote. But the same statewide candidate, the worst performing candidate on the state ballot, on the statewide ballot, was tapped to run the Republican Party here in Michigan. And so we know that she is going to continue her discredited attempts to undermine and assault our democracy. And so I just want to, again, give credit to our local clerk. And I think that this is a really important thing that we can be doing to make sure that we're supporting the work that she does each and every day to defend our democracy locally, and to make sure that every single vote here in Ann Arbor is counted. Thanks.
Further discussion? I'm delighted to be part of bringing this forward. The efficient and secure and accurate conduct of elections is fundamental to what we do here in the city, and we have done it. I say we, of course. I mean the clerk's office, Clerk Boudry, and those who have the good fortune to work with her have done it under ordinary circumstances and extraordinary circumstances. Moving forward with threats to our democracy, with threats to election integrity, intentional threats to election integrity, and the increased administration cost of, a welcome cost of increased absentee voting, increased early voting, the purchase of a structure for the purpose of supporting our elections is a necessity. And I'm delighted that we are able tonight to move that forward. We're able to do so because we have a staff that has had the vision to note the need and to present it to us and to work incredibly hard to accomplish it. It also must be said that, we were dealing with a partner on the other side who was not out to wring the last dollar out of a buyer. They were, there, understanding that the building was being purchased for a civic purpose, and in a manner consistent with that they were approaching it with a civic good as an important factor of how they were approaching the issue on the other side as well. And I think it's important and proper that we express gratitude and appreciation on that as well. And so I do so. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. Ms. Cord, do we have the pleasure of a closed session today?
No, thank you, Mayor.
We have then before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Briggs, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Do we have communications from the city attorney?
Just gratitude for allowing me to continue to serve our city. Thank you.
Well then, back at you. May I have in the absence of overflow public comment, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edmonds, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.